Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Let's Start Story. What if Harry Potter destroyed Dumbledore's legacy with the truth? So do 2 blue hearts comment, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video, and please share with your friends and watch till end. Also check out Patreon for I have upload Harry x Hermione uncensored spicy version, link in description. All the details. We're getting super close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. So please subscribe, like, and share this video. It really helps the channel grow and keeps me fired up to make more magical content just for you. Now grab your popcorn, and let's jump right into the story. Harry dear, are you alright? Don't worry, I'm sure Albus will help you get through this. Not that, but that is all I hear of Mrs. Weasley's words of concern and reassurance. As by now only 7 words are ringing through my head, words that get reduced down to 4, then down to 2 words and then down to 1. Albus will help you get through this. Albus will help you. Albus will. Albus. That one name. The name of a man who, without anyone knowing, utterly ruined my life 2 years ago. The name of a man whose actions, as I have come to realize over the years, might have good intentions, but they always end up going horrible. The man who, I have come to learn, claims to be one thing, but who has a dark side to him that almost no one is able or willing to see. But while it has been almost a whole year since I last thought of that horrible act the man committed, my mind is deeply analyzing everything that has happened recently. Back then I didn't dare voice what happened, because I didn't think anyone would believe me. It was Albus Dumbledore, after all. Who would ever believe he could have done such a thing? But now, Fudge has been wrecking and demolishing his reputation for weeks now. And there's no way that man won't try to milk this hearing of mine for all it's worth. What if he turns this hearing into an all-out trial? Would he do that? Of course he would, but I can take advantage of that. I can get my long-awaited justice. And then another realization hits me. And not just mine. I look at Sirius, and only then, when I see his concerned frown, I realize that I was lost in thought and that I must not have noticed how my reaction to all these realizations must have been visible on my face the whole time. Harry dear, really. There is nothing. I am done letting Mrs. Weasley patronize me and giving me false platitudes, because she thinks she can reassure me and make me think that certain situations aren't as serious as they really are. And so, for the first time since I met her, I decide to interrupt her. Mrs. Weasley, I'd like to think that I've been through enough harrowing experiences to know whether or not I should take a situation seriously or not. I am not going to believe everything will be sunshine and daisies when my future as a wizard is on the line. And unlike you, I don't put full trust in my life's future with just one man, regardless of who he is or how grand his reputation might be. And I deeply care and respect you for your opinion, so I would deeply appreciate it if you returned the favor. You like to rely on Dumbledore, I don't. The woman seems to feel several emotions over my words. Shock that I interrupted her. Shock that I called her out on trying to down-talk the whole situation. And even, stupidly and amazingly enough, horror that I don't feel the same level of devotion to Dumbledore as her. And because I know her, I turn to glare at Hermione and dare her with my glare not to try and convince me either. With my glare I dare her not to contradict my words about respecting another person's opinion. Is there any reason that you don't trust Dumbledore to help you through your hearing tomorrow, Harry? Mr. Weasley, ever the voice of reason, asks me, and I really want to tell them, even summon the clipboard with files I was handed 2 years ago. But my mind is working overtime, just like it did when I was in the graveyard a few weeks ago, and I am using all the skills that Ron taught me through all of the times we played chess. Not yet, I think to myself, and so I decide to focus on a different aspect of the current conversation. There are, but I don't feel comfortable sharing them right now. Mostly, because I don't want to have to repeat myself more than once. And I feel that more people deserve to know these reasons. That Dumbledore deserves to know these reasons. A few of those in the group around me wanted to argue with me when I refused to share the reasons, but they let me speak and now they nod in agreement with me. Yet I know that it's just because of their respect for Dumbledore that they agree with me. Except Sirius. He smiles at me, yet the look in his eyes proves that he suspects me to have a different reason from the one I voiced. I smile back at him, even if I feel a sting of guilt for not confiding in the one man who seems able to see Dumbledore for the flawed man that I see him. Well, I'm sure you can explain them to the headmaster tomorrow, after he helped you and Amelia settle things at your hearing, dear. Mrs. Weasley tries to decide for me. But I just roll my eyes and say, Mrs. Weasley, this is exactly what I meant just now. Come on, everyone, think. This is Fudge's chance to really humiliate me, even more than he has been doing through the papers these last few weeks. Can any of you really look me in the eye, and tell me that he won't try to milk this for all it's worth? That he won't try to, I don't know, turn the hearing into a trial and change the time and place or something. Make me late for my own trial. Tell me Fudge isn't pompous enough to try such a thing. Mrs. Weasley obviously wants to do exactly that, but Kingsley, who is at the table with us, puts a silencing hand on her arm and stands up. I better get to the ministry and keep an ear open. Arthur, if you could stay here, I'll contact you the usual way once I know more. The balding man looks troubled, but he nods nonetheless and Kingsley leaves the room. Mrs. Weasley splutters and tries to argue what just happened, but it's obvious. The woman is trying to convince others, just to convince herself that this can't be happening. I want to sigh and shake my head, but Sirius distracts me and asks, so you're going to reveal your problems with Dumbledore during your upcoming trial? Don't you think that a bit dangerous? Your problems sound like they can get Dumbledore in a lot of trouble. And, you know, with Voldemort out there and all. At this I really sigh and ask the others if I can be honest with them. Everyone nods and Mrs. Weasley even snaps that would be appreciated. I send her a quick frown to show my displeasure with her tone of voice and snap back. As far as I'm concerned, you guys are so full of worshipping Dumbledore, you're underappreciating your own skills and talents. I mean, let's face facts here. We have an escaped convict who survived the worst place on Earth, a werewolf, a retired Auror, a Muggle expert, 2 other Aurors, a curse breaker and a woman who survived raising the twins. What has Dumbledore done, in the last decade, that is more impressive than what you have done with your lives in the same amount of time? And don't say he's a great headmaster, that doesn't really set him apart from the other great headmasters at Hogwarts or other schools. And then, for Mrs. Weasley's sake, I'm not even talking about my friends and me. I mean, Ron is the best chess master Hogwarts has seen in over a decade, Hermione is the witch that solved the Chamber of Secrets, Ginny survived Voldemort's manipulation and even, temporarily, managed to break his control over her. The twins are inventors with a passion for explosions that can create perfect distractions for innocent people to escape dangerous situations. And I think everyone here knows what I've done. The stone, the chamber, the Patronus, the tournament and the graveyard. I'm not saying Dumbledore is worthless, I'm saying that we're worth more than you lot seem willing to realize, all because you're so focused on his greatness instead of your own. You are so desperate to believe in him, you've been diminishing your own self-worth, your inner confidence and your self-reliance. Mrs. Weasley, with all due respect, you claim that Ron and I are kids, but you are more dependent on Father Dumbledore than your kids are on you. And that's more dangerous than what I have to reveal about the man. Because if you keep being this reliant, keep going down this path, you might try to call out to Dumbledore for help, in the middle of a fight with Death Eaters. And those few seconds that you are calling out to him will give said Death Eaters the chance to curse you, maybe even kill you. And that might be a bit of doomsday thinking, but you can't tell me that Death Eaters aren't opportunistic like that. The others are all either looking or gaping at me as I have gone to stand up and am gripping the table with my knuckles white as I tell them my beliefs, my concerns and the reasons I believe and know what I do. Harry Potter, for goodness sake, you shouldn't. Mrs. Weasley tries to argue with me, but I glare at her and yell. You can't tell me I shouldn't think like that. You are all going to be fighting murderers. You can't expect me to know that a war is coming and not expect exactly that. For magic's sake, I'm Muggle-raised, Mrs. Weasley. And the Muggles have fought 2 horrifying, horrible and utterly destructive wars in only the last century. And all Muggles are taught about these wars, especially the latter one, at an early age. So Hermione and I know exactly what happens to people who fight battles in a war. And just the notion that you expect me to ignore that, to ignore the notion that I might lose loved ones to that madman. No, I don't raise my voice in the end. Instead I lower it down to a nearly deadly tone and just stare the woman down. Mrs. Weasley seems horrified at what I just revealed to her about Muggle education. But then my attention is drawn to her husband. The man sighs and says, I just got a report from Kingsley. Molly, Harry is right. Fudge changed the time and place for the whole thing. Harry's on trial now. And what's worse, he's going to be on trial in front of the entire Wizengamot, in courtroom 10. Instantly Sirius is on his feet and snarls, that damned bastard. That's where my deranged witch of a cousin was sentenced. How dare he put Harry on trial there? He's basically telling the Wizengamot that Harry is just as dangerous as Bloody Bella. He can't get away with that. I put a hand on Sirius' shoulder and say, don't worry, Sirius. I won't let him get away with it. I'll make sure to point this out to him and to everyone else there. And then I'll strike and tell everyone just what I think of the headmaster and why. In fact, a thought occurs to me as I speak, and while I know that Hermione will probably want to argue with me, I send a quick look of request to Ron before I call out. Dobby. Ron had been confused when he spotted the look, but he gets the reason behind it the minute he hears me call out. And while the eccentric little house elf pops himself into the kitchen, Ron slaps a hand on Hermione's mouth, silencing her. I bend down to be, somewhat, on eye level with the excitable little being and ask, Dobby, are you able to pop into courtroom 10, back at the ministry? Instantly all excitement deflates from the elf and he nods, while he, for some reason, has a guilty look on his face. Yes, Harry Potter, sir. He vocally confirms it for me. I smile at him and say, then tomorrow morning, a few minutes into my new trial, I need you to pop everyone here into that courtroom. I'm going to need them to be present when I reveal to them what I have against Dumbledore, okay Dobby? Can you do that for me? Dobby looks at me for a long moment and then, to my horrified shock, his big, tennis ball-shaped eyes turn to look up to the ceiling. I wonder and feel horrified at the possibility that Dobby knows of the clipboard and wonder, does Dumbledore know? But then Dobby looks back at me and nods again, a determined look on his face as he says exactly what I need to hear to calm down my raging heart. Dobby will, Harry Potter, sir. Dobby will help Harry Potter, sir, get justice. I sigh in relief and smile gratefully at my small, loyal little friend. Then, just because I don't feel like hearing Hermione rant, I leave the kitchen. I know Harry's been troubled and concerned about his hearing all week. I know that he has desperately tried to distract himself from thinking about it by just keeping himself busy. And I really can't blame him. But while I silently cursed Mum for bringing the whole thing up so suddenly and callously earlier, I definitely didn't expect the outcome to be what it was. Harry's reaction to Mum's words was much worse than I had anticipated, yet it seemed as if his mind went a million miles a minute, and ended up somewhere completely different. I've known since first year that Harry is smarter than most people give him credit for and that he is emotionally and mentally older than his actual age. But I really didn't expect the words that left his mouth earlier this evening. I know that we joked about Dumbledore being off his rocker when we thought that Dumbledore had tried to test Harry back in first year. But apparently Harry took that joke more seriously than I did at the time. And he has been keeping silent about this the whole time. I want to be angry with Harry over this, but I can't. Because I understand exactly why he never told anyone. Both my mum and Hermione are devoted Dumbledore fans who are always vocal about their loyalty and respect for the man and who go all out in their defense of him if someone were to say one wrong word about him. I even remember the one time that Hermione ranted at a second year for calling Dumbledore old, even if the man always looks wise but ancient. I thought it ridiculous then and I think it ridiculous now. Yet at the same time, it also gives Harry a valid excuse behind his silence. And so, after Harry left, I harshly point this out. I remind the two of Harry's statement about respecting other people's opinions. And when they try to argue Harry's silence, I use exactly this event as an example to silence them both. Hermione turns red and tries to argue against Harry's use of Dobby, but I snarl, Harry didn't order Dobby to do anything. He asked Dobby. Stop being so bloody focused on your need for Sputu. I don't care, be a success and realize what you're accusing your own friends of, will you? And unlike usual the girl doesn't argue back as she seems too horrified by my accusation and the fact that I don't care about the pronunciation of her little club. I take and release a deep breath and say, look, let's just face facts here. You two might feel betrayed by Harry right now, but don't you think that, whatever Dumbledore did, might have made Harry feel just as betrayed back when he found out. And that the way you two just tried to argue this whole thing might be the whole reason he never voiced these feelings before now. We don't know what Dumbledore did, but it's obviously big, bad and has hurt Harry something horrible. And right now, we can't all just side with Dumbledore just because he's Dumbledore. We need to be true, honest and loyal, to the person who was obviously hurt by him. And whatever it is that Dumbledore did to Harry to make Harry feel like this. We'll find out tomorrow at Harry's trial. And Mum, Hermione, let me remind you of one thing. Whatever this is, Harry obviously found out some time ago, maybe even a year or two ago. And yet, no matter how hurt he was by this, how much he disagreed with you and your devotion to the man, he kept his mouth shut. He let you worship the man, because he knew that made you happy. You should be grateful about that and support Harry now that he has opened up and confessed how he really feels. He has supported you in your belief in the man for all this time, now you should return the bloody favor. You owe Harry that much. And until we know what these problems are, we keep our mouths shut to anyone not here right now. We support Harry, but we keep quiet. We are going to prove Harry one thing. We're not Pettigrew. We are not traitors. Not to his cause. And with that, without giving anyone a chance to argue my words, as I feel sure my mum will want to do, I follow my best friend's example. I leave the kitchen. I reach my bedroom and Harry is lying with his face to the door as I open it. Instantly I want to voice my support of him, but Harry silences me with a finger and then motions for the empty frame. This confuses me at first, but then, silently Harry mouths, "Phineas Black. Former headmaster." And instantly I get what my best friend is getting at. The man was a former headmaster and so he has another portrait. And that one is in Dumbledore's office. So anything that Harry and I discuss in here, the man could report to Dumbledore. I nod at my best friend and say, "You'll do fine in your hearing, mate. I'm sure of it. Now let's get some rest. You'll need it for tomorrow." Harry smiles at me and in his eyes, I see a deep sense of pride, relief and gratitude. I smile back as Harry looking at me like that has always been special to me, it always proved how much Harry appreciated me as a friend. Harry then humors me as he goes to shower like Mum suggested earlier and then we both fall asleep. Later that night, I have never been a light sleeper, at least until I saw my best friend come back from being abducted and discovered that he had witnessed the return of the darkest wizard of all times. Harry doesn't know it, and I don't tell him, because I know it will just upset him, but all week his nightmares and how he vocally responds to them has woken me up every night. It utterly breaks me to hear him beg for Cedric's life night after night. And because Mum continuously keeps us close together, I can't get her or another adult apart and tell them what's been happening. At the same time I just don't get why these nightmares keep happening every night only after Mum has done one of her nightly rounds. But this time something's different. Again I feel myself waking up, because I hear noises that worry even my subconscious into rousing me awake. Again it takes me a minute or so to realize that it's still dark and that Harry must be having the same nightmare again. But then, as I get out of bed and move over to his, I realize this isn't the case. "No, give it back. Please. How could you? Haven't you taken enough away from me? Please, don't take it away from me. I can't lose more. Not anymore. Please. Why? Why would you do this? How could you?" Harry's words are very different from his usual nightmares and it takes me a second to realize that he's dreaming about what Dumbledore did. Instantly my gaze shoots for the empty portrait frame and I stare at it for several seconds with my heart beating in my throat. Not even a snore is heard. I sigh in relief and then suddenly Harry shoots up. And out of instinct I press my hand against his mouth and stifle his scream. Harry's eyes widen in fear and the next second I have Harry tucked within a warm embrace, just like I used to do when Ginny was still only 9 years old and Mum didn't hear her having a nightmare because there were so many floors between their bedrooms. And this time Harry does something that he normally doesn't do when he wakes up from a nightmare in the middle of the night. The slightly younger teen clings to my nightshirt and starts to cry as he begs me, "Don't let him take it. I can't lose it. I lost too much. Please, he can't take it. I can't lose it. Please, please, stop him. I can't lose it. Please, help me get it back. Please." I realize that Harry is so far gone that he doesn't even realize who he's begging with, but I don't care. I cuddle and comfort the teen that has been my younger brother ever since our first Christmas together and whisper. Weasley, promise, I will help you get it back, my little brother. I know that Dad has always hinted about how there is magic attached to a Weasley promise, but that the magic will only set if you make it to either a fellow Weasley or someone you consider a fellow Weasley. And as I refer to Harry as my little brother, I feel this very magic settle over both of us. I feel it seeping into my skin and settling there, like the freckles that my family is known for. Again I spare a glance at the portrait on the wall between our two beds, but the frame remains empty and silent yet again, which relieves me. Then I notice something else. The magic that settled into Harry seems to have calmed him enough that he fell back asleep. I sigh in relief and tuck him back under the covers before I stand up. And because I remember all Dad told me about a Weasley promise, I walk out of the bedroom. And just like I expected, Mum and Dad are hurrying towards me as I close the door behind me. Mum wants to speak up, but I silence her with a finger in front of my own lips and motion upstairs, where I know Sirius' bedroom is at. Mum doesn't seem to like this idea, but Dad nods at me. I nod back at him and guide the two upstairs to the upper landing. I make sure to knock as quietly as possible as I don't want to wake Lupin as well as Sirius. For a moment I wonder if I didn't knock too softly, but the man proves that, like me, he's a light sleeper. He opens the door and lets us in. Instantly, as soon as the door is closed behind the three of us, I prevent my mum from ranting at me and just answer the questions I am sure she wants to ask. Harry had another nightmare. Only this one wasn't like his usual ones, the ones he has every night about Cedric. And before you ask why I didn't tell you about those sooner, Harry doesn't know I know about them. He doesn't know that I stopped being a heavy sleeper after he came back from the maze back in June. And I know Harry. He'll be upset that I didn't tell him, but he'll be even more upset with his belief that he burdens me by constantly waking me up. I know that's not the case, Mum, but that's how he sees it. Still, like I said, this one wasn't like his usual ones. He usually calls out Cedric's name and all that. But this time he kept talking about something, because he called it an it. Give it back. Don't take it away from me. Those were two things he said in his sleep. Then he woke up, almost screamed, but I stifled him, and then he started to cry and beg. But I don't think he realized who he was holding. He wasn't saying any names, while he begged. And again he was talking about an it. Don't let him take it. I can't lose it. Please, help me get it back. I don't know what Dumbledore took from Harry, but it's big. Which also explains why Harry kept quiet. Who would ever believe that Dumbledore of all people would steal something? And who knows? Maybe Dumbledore didn't see it as stealing, because he took on the role of Harry's guardian after Halloween and all. But if that's the case, then that's even worse. I mean, if that's how he sees it, what will stop him from taking more? What stops him from taking, I don't know, Harry's funds and put them all into the war effort without his permission or anything? Yeah, Harry would want to end the war with Voldemort, but he already lost his parents. Does he really need to lose what they left him to the war as well? Mum looks horrified and her face shows how much she desperately wants to not believe me. Dad, on the other hand, looks deeply pained, yet there is also a look of pride adorning his face. Sirius, however, confuses me as he has his eyes closed, a closed look on his face and his arms crossed while he's shaking his head. He breaths out one last time and then says, "You're right, Ron. And before you say anything, Molly, I have yet to hear one word of apology from Albus for how he let Crouch send me to Azkaban for life. He just used an excuse of I believed what James and Lily told us all and then distracted me by changing the topic onto Harry and the danger he was in with the tournament. So yeah, I can see Albus doing something similar to my godson. Take his money, give some lukewarm excuse about doing it behind his back and then distract Harry with the upcoming war effort or something. Yes, it really is for the best that Harry confronts Albus tomorrow at his trial, and that we'll be there to support him through it all. Because let's face it, we've been letting Albus get away with way too much, just because we so desperately believed that he knew best. I nod at this and say, you know Sirius is right, Mum. You're really not fooling anyone when you try to hold back on your opinion about those muggles Harry lives with. You despise them just as much as Harry does. But you accept Dumbledore sending Harry back there again and again, exactly because of what Sirius just said. With anyone else you would argue, fight and even send them a howler if you think they did something wrong. With Dumbledore, you ask a weak question and he easily placates you. But so far, when it comes to those muggles, it's been proven that those platitudes are just empty words. Nothing more. Mum looks deeply troubled and Dad asks, "What do you suggest we do, Ron?" I sigh and answer that we should just go on with the current plan. Dad nods and then he tells me, "Make sure Harry wakes up early tomorrow, Ron. I didn't get the chance to tell either of you this last night, but the trial will be at 8 in the morning. I really don't like the idea of Harry potentially going to his trial tired, but I nod nonetheless. And when I'm back in bed, I fall asleep to the thought, he can sleep all he wants once Dumbledore's ego has been taken care of. I don't know how or why I woke up without a nightmare about Cedric, the graveyard and that strange corridor that I keep traversing through, but I'm not going to complain either. Not today. Instead of that, I just wake up, put on the clothes that Mrs. Weasley mentioned the other night and, at long last, pull the satchel that has the clipboard with the evidence against Dumbledore in it from the very bottom of my trunk, where I hid it under a false extra layer that I stitched onto the floor. For a few minutes I stay seated with the satchel on my lap, my eyes focused on it without really seeing it at the same time. But then I notice that my vision is strangely blurry and I feel wetness going down my face. Before I can wipe it off, Ron's next to me and he does it for me. "It's going to be alright, mate. You'll be alright." I look from the satchel, to him and then up to the portrait frame. It's still empty and no sound is coming from its frame. Phineas Nigellus Black is still in his other portrait in the headmaster's office. I really don't know who to thank for the fact that, tonight and today of all days, Dumbledore didn't order the man to keep an eye out, but I am still beyond grateful. Ron and I head down and the atmosphere in the kitchen really isn't much better. Everyone is incredibly tense and a few heads are down, not in despair, but in contemplation. What interests me is that Hermione is seated between the twins for some strange reason. But then I see them shaking their heads at her and instantly I get it. I smile at my female best friend and silently tell her, "I get it. It's okay. I don't want this either. I don't want to believe this to be true either. I understand." Hermione's eyes widen as she notices the message in my gaze and then her own tear up and she smiles back at me. "Harry, good you're up. I was just about to send Remus up to wake you. I didn't get the chance to tell you last night, but your trial is at 8 o'clock. We've got half an hour to have a quick breakfast and then I'll side along you to my office. From there we'll have an easier chance to get to the courtroom in time. Now sit down. You're going to need your nourishments today. And don't worry if you can't eat now, Molly is already working on some small snacks for later, just in case." At first Mr. Weasley's words had utterly terrified me as I hadn't been prepared to know that the confrontation I have been, silently, hoping to have for years would happen so quickly. But the man's words about how we'll get to where we need to be, his tone of compassion and care and the notion that Mrs. Weasley is already prepared for the chance that I might not be able to eat reassure me greatly. Still, I really can't stomach more than a single bit of toast with cheese and a glass of water. I know the others are all watching me, but I don't care. Now that the moment I have been waiting for is so close to happening, my mind is once more running 100,000 miles a second and I am continuously coming up and discarding or altering ideas on how I can really, truly take advantage of the chance I now have in front of me. Though the real reason I am doing this, not just to make time go faster, is because I worry. Worry for my friends. Worry for my friendship with them. And worry for how they will react. React when they learn that I don't have one issue with Dumbledore. I have 5. Then Mr. Weasley taps me on the shoulder and this startles me so much I almost jump. Instantly I am glad that I already finished my water as I would have spilled it for sure. "Sorry Harry, but it's time to go. You ready?" I am ready. And yet I'm not. Still I nod at the man. I get out of my seat and I'm almost at the door out of the kitchen when Lupin reminds me that they're only a call away. I smile at him as I know he means Dobby. I nod at him and leave the room. Once we get outside, Mr. Weasley whispers, "Count down from 5, take a deep breath and then count back up, but keeping holding your breath until you're done counting." 10 seconds later I am gasping and wheezing as I ask Mr. Weasley why he gave me that advice. The man smiles, while I feel a little closed in by the small size of the man's office, and he explains that it had to do with the tension in my body and the lack of food in my stomach. And when he tells me that I probably would have thrown up or fainted if he hadn't given me something to focus on, I take one last deep breath and give the man a grateful smile. Then suddenly someone comes running into the already small office. "Oh Arthur. Thank goodness you're here. I just heard something disgusting about the Potter boys' hearing. They've changed the time and venue. It starts at 8 o'clock now and it's down in old courtroom 10. For a moment Mr. Weasley looked as if he wanted to reassure the man or something. But the look was fleeting and suddenly the man is pulling my arm as he rushes out of the office. I look at the man confused and he answers me with 3 words. Safety for London. I understand that the man wants to cover for Kingsley telling him about the changed time and venue, yet at the same time it just further proves my point about Dumbledore. Why would Mr. Weasley not trust his own co-worker to keep his secrets? I think to myself and I silently make a note to ask the man this question later. We rush past several cubicles and I notice several people sticking their heads out of their cubicles. I notice that Kingsley is one of them and realize that these must be the Auror offices. I grimace as Fudge changing the venue just took me a big advantage. If the venue had remained what it was I would have only been a few feet away from my destination. Now it takes us about 10 minutes to rush past the cubicles, get ourselves a golden lift that goes all the way down to level 9, the Department of Mysteries, and down a flight of steps. The corridor we're in really reminds me of the corridor leading to Snape's dungeons and part of me wonders if he'll remain at Hogwarts once I've taken care of Dumbledore. Yet the thought only fleetingly passes my mind. We reach a grimy dark door with a huge iron lock and while Mr. Weasley leans against the wall with a hand clutching at a stitch in his chest, I check my watch. My heart is beating wildly from the exertion, yet it calms down a little when I see that I have about 10 minutes left. Because of this I just calmly wait for Mr. Weasley to catch his breath. Or so it looks. I lean against the wall next to Mr. Weasley and let out slightly labored breaths myself. But while I have my head tilted a little, my eyes are scanning the hallway from beneath my fringe. I try not to gasp or let out a breath of annoyance when I notice a strange tilt in the shadows of an alcove that is next to the door. Mentally I am counting down the minutes and when 3 have passed, I consider it acceptable time for me and Mr. Weasley to have regained ourselves from our run. I release a deep breath, as if I am trying to prepare myself to face something extremely difficult. Mr. Weasley calls out to me and I smile at him, showing him a level of confidence that I am sure Dumbledore will not want to believe that I am really feeling, but I am. Don't worry, Mr. Weasley. The last thing I want to do is let this whole thing last till 2 in the afternoon, so I better just go in there now. It might be rude to be late, but it can't be rude to be early, right? I'll just do my best to make it take only a few minutes and then you'll see me again. Promise. The man smiles and I head inside. His smile proved it. Mr. Weasley got my message. I just hope that Dumbledore didn't. I have to admit, it feels slightly unsettling to be here. In the room where a deranged witch was sentenced for life for a horrible crime against one of my closest friends. And the fact that Fudge might be planning to give me a similar treatment makes the toast in my stomach act up. But I swallow this and the sudden sense of unease and nervousness down. Keep focused. Remember why you're here. Set the scene and get ready. This is what you've waited for this whole time. These past 2 years. It's almost time. My pace is slightly unsteady, but that's due to a sense of tense anticipation, not fear or unease. Still I'm sure that's what everyone who sees me walk in will probably think. My eyes fly over every face and thankfully I notice one face that I recognize. Even without her infamous stuffed vulture hat, there is no mistaking Augusta Longbottom. The woman might try to hide it behind a mask of professionalism, but there is no mistaking her disgust with the situation in general. The woman has no interest in being here or letting me stand trial like this, she is here against her will. I send her a quick look to reassure her and let her know that I am not holding this against her. When a voice from the other side of the room catches my attention. How did you get here? We only sent an owl to your address a few minutes ago. There is no way you could have. I beg your pardon, Minister. I want to stifle a snicker at how the pudgy man just shot himself in the foot, but before the woman who is standing with Madame Longbottom can reprimand the minister, the door behind me slams open and an ancient voice yells. Witness for the defense. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Quite a few of those in the raised seats around me seem shocked to see the man, confused as to why he's here. A few even start to whisper amongst themselves. But I don't care if those whispers are in my favor or not, I just reply. Whose defense? Mine, or yours? And instantly I cause Dumbledore to falter, which is only better as he had apparently expected me to be much further into the room and he would have walked straight into me otherwise. It also makes a few of those who turn to whisper with each other look back at me, looks of confusion and intrigue on their faces and the faces of their peers. I spare another glance through the room and then turn back to Dumbledore. The man, who has always looked like someone who is in charge and knows it, now looked deeply befuddled and confused. This look makes a satisfied grin grow on my face. The door behind the man opens again, almost hitting Dumbledore in the back, and Mr. Weasley walks in as well. Percy wants to argue this and order his father to leave the room, but Mr. Weasley shows a rare sense of determination as he says, "You lot are putting a teenager on trial for a lousy bit of underage magic. There is nothing going by the books here, so you don't have anything to argue my inclusion in all this." Yet at this the woman standing with Madame Longbottom argues that I broke the statute of secrecy and that that's why the Wizengamot came together. Mr. Weasley rolls his eyes and says, "I'm disappointed in you, Amelia. You're usually right on the facts and don't go with ideas like these until you've got all the facts. This time, you're missing a vital one. The muggle that saw Harry cast magic was his own cousin, Dudley Dursley. And he's known of our world for 4 years now." And for the second time in a few minutes the woman turns to the minister and yells, "What in the name of magic, Cornelius? How dare you lie to me? You said there was nothing I needed to know and that I should just let you lead this trial. Well, this is the last time I listen to you about my area of expertise. And before you even think of opening your mouth, Dolores Jane Umbridge, false actions deserve a reprimanding, regardless of status, title or anything else. If I made this mistake, I would have expected Cornelius to give me the same hard time as I am giving him. That's simply how it works if you do something to break the trust and loyalty that your colleagues have in you." I nod in agreement to her words and feel a sense of annoyed disbelief when Percy tries to challenge me about this motion and asks me what I know about any of this. I'm a seeker, Percy, as I'm sure you'll remember from the time I won you those galleons against Ravenclaw. That makes me part of a team. And I can't imagine how the sense of teamwork, trust and loyalty between teammates is any different than the sense between members of the ministry. And this time Madame Bones is the one to nod in agreement before she growls, "You are indeed correct, Mr. Potter. Just a shame that that is only a belief, not an actual fact." Thankfully Fudge cringes and has the decency to look abashed and ashamed. "Either way, Mr. Potter, what exactly did you mean with the headmaster needing to defend himself?" Madame Bones asks me and I see Dumbledore turning to Mr. Weasley from the corner of my eye as this question is asked. Mr. Weasley looks back at the man with a stone-faced look and his arms crossed. My lips twitch into a grin for just a second before I return my focus where it belongs. On the plan I have been hoping to accomplish for 2 years now. I could explain that to you, Madame Bones, but before I do, I'm afraid I'm going to have to call in a few more witnesses and people who can prove my case for me. And I mean my cases against Dumbledore, not this underage magic thing we were supposed to meet about later today. The woman nods, even though Percy and the woman on the other side of the minister's seat, who resembles a toad dressed in pink in the worst ways possible, try to argue against this. But I just grin and call out, "Dobby." And a second later Hermione, the Weasleys, Kingsley, Tonks, Moody, Lupin and Sirius are in the room with us, even if Sirius is hiding in a circle formed by Bill, Remus, Kingsley and Ron. I really just know that he's here, because I know that Dobby has no intention of leaving him behind. What is the meaning of this? The woman on Fudge's left screeches out and the high-pitched sound of her voice is utterly horrible and makes many of us cringe horribly. Madame Longbottom comes to my aid and says, "The meaning, Dolores, is exactly as young Mr. Potter said. He called in on people who can help him in his case against Dumbledore. And with that he proved that our ministry is not even half as safe as we always believed it to be. If a house elf can get people this deeply into our ministry, who's to say criminals can't use their elves to get out of, say, our holding cells?" The woman named Dolores is obviously furious that I proved this fallacy within the ministry so easily, but before she can rant at me or anything, Bill steps up and says, "Madam Bones, if it pleases you, I'll gladly offer my services to fix this error, once we've dealt with the situation at hand, that is." And with that he glares at Dumbledore, who looks startled. Madam Bones nods and tells William that they can discuss terms in a contract later on. She turns to me and asks, "Mr. Potter, what exactly do you have against the headmaster, if I may ask?" And with that one question it feels as if a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. At the same time it feels as if the satchel that is slung over my shoulder just gained Hagrid's weight and then times 2, if not 3. I release a deep breath in order to keep my mind sharp and my heart clear of nerves. I head over to where she's standing and pull the clipboard from the satchel as I say, "Madam Bones, I received this contract 2 years ago, during my 3-week stay in Diagon Alley. You will also find a letter from King Ragnarok himself to verify that the contract is indeed legit and authentic, as well as one other letter that I received at the start of my 4th-year summer. Though I'd like to ask you to ignore that one, at least for the time being." The woman nods and takes the clipboard from me. And as soon as the weight of the cardboard and parchment leave my hand, I feel like crying tears of fearful relief. The woman notices this as her eyes temporarily widen behind her monocle. While I spoke, I had heard multiple gasps coming from behind me. And even without looking around, I know who gasped. Dumbledore had gasped when he heard when I got the contract. Bill had gasped when he heard who I got the letter from, and Mr. and Mrs. Weasley had gasped after they had heard their son gasp. Hermione had been the last of the group to gasp. All of them were in disbelief. And Madam Bones joins them as she gasps in horrified disbelief after only reading a single line on the contract. This act feels painfully familiar, as I did the exact same thing the first time that I got the clipboard handed to me. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Just because you appointed yourself Mr. Potter's guardian 14 years ago, this does not give you the right to sign a contract meant to sell everything Mr. Potter owns upon his 17th birthday. You better have the explanation of your life for this one. I really don't know how I feel now that the truth has been revealed, now that the man's crimes have been yelled out in such an accusing manner. On one hand, it once again feels like a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. I know why this is. It's because, even when I walked in here, I didn't think anyone would really believe me. I was terrified that Dumbledore's reputation was still too strong. On another hand, I feel intense relief, glee, and even a sense of peace. The whole thing is out in the open. And the only thing I can do now is make sure I come out on top, that I get back what's rightfully mine, and that Dumbledore gets his rightly deserved punishment. Yet at the same time it feels as if the words that have been yelled changed themselves into an invisible form of pressure, as if the gravity of the room intensified and as if it's now all pushing down on me, just like the satchel from before. I know I need to be strong. I know there is still much to do. I know this is only the beginning. And yet I can't help myself. I shed a tear of pure emotion. And then I speak up. "Madam Bones, this is not the only thing Dumbledore is guilty of." Instantly all eyes are back on me, many looking at me in utter and sheer disbelief. I blink away another tear and continue talking. Ever since I found out about this, I've been debating with myself on whether or not I should reveal it. But I was just constantly so afraid. This is Albus Dumbledore I was accusing. Who was going to believe me? How could I be sure that they wouldn't take his side, just due to his reputation alone? I didn't think that even Lucius Malfoy would believe me. And ever since his contempt with Dumbledore has been well known, at least to me. I'm sure this same contempt has been known to others for much longer. Amazingly enough, even Fudge and a few others who obviously support him nod in agreement to this. I feel truly relieved at this sight and even breath out in relief for just a moment before I continue my long-awaited explanation. Either way, even though I never really had the guts to reveal what I knew, it didn't stop my brain from working. And, over the years I realized that this isn't the only thing that Dumbledore did wrong. That he has hurt others. In fact, I can name a total of 5 instances, this one not included, where some might say that Dumbledore just didn't think straight or that he just missed a few very obvious signs. The problem? They are far too many, and some of these signs are too obvious. And I'd like to point out these 5 instances. If the Ministry will let me. And instantly Madam Longbottom calls for a vote from the Wizengamot. Fudge splutters for a moment, but the next moment the whole courtroom lights up as almost every wand in the room is raised and lit by their owners. Fudge and Dumbledore share looks of equal amounts of shock, yet Dumbledore also seems to feel deeply betrayed by this sight. Something that makes me mentally shake my head. Madam Bones gives me one final nod and I take this as my cue. I turn to Dumbledore, and because there is a bit of distance between us, I feel as if we are standing opposite each other on a dueling ground or something. The man looks at me and his disbelief that I would actually do this just fuels the rage I have held back for the past 2 years. But with everything I have, I suppress this senseless anger one last time as I absolutely don't want to lose my chance to get my justice now. Harry, I truly do not know. The man tries to plead with me, but I snarl at him that it's too late for that. The man reels back and tries to convince me that I should give him a chance. But I scoff and grin and retort that he doesn't even know my problems with him yet. A few snorts are heard from the crowd around me and I lean back against the wall that is in front of the raised dais and seats. I know I look a lot more relaxed than I actually feel, but I stand like this due to my desire to have something solid to hold on to. Like I said, most of your mistakes, I guess you can call them, can be summed up by 4 simple words. An old man's mistake. It's just a fact that each of these mistakes are too grave to be considered just that or for that excuse to be legitimate. Let's start at the beginning, 50 years ago. Instantly I have everyone's attention and most of those around me look confused and befuddled. And also make sounds to convey this. But I ignore everyone around me, everyone except for Dumbledore and my friends. 50 years ago, Tom Riddle killed Moaning Myrtle and blamed Hagrid for it. 2 years ago, Ron and I were the first ever to question her about the day of her death. I cannot and will not believe that it took all that long between her death and her ghost to appear for you and your staff at the time not to make the link. So why didn't any of you ever question her? Ghosts obviously love talking about the time of their deaths. They hold death day parties and Myrtle looked as if I just handed her the crown jewels of the queen or something when Ron and I asked her. And you might be all like, what could that have accomplished? Several things. 1. Myrtle's description of the person who came into her bathroom would have exonerated Hagrid as their voices are beyond too different. 2. It would have told you where to find the entrances. Myrtle clearly heard metal and stone grind against each other and told us about the sink and tap that never worked and that had a snake engraved onto the tap. The entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. Hiding in plain sight and able to be found by everyone and their mother, if they had just thought to ask the ghost of the chamber's last victim. Though while I will give you this, the staff at the time of this event and in the years that followed are just as guilty of this neglect of duty. I will admit this is the truth. Every staff member who came to work at Hogwarts after this incident and learned of it, is just as guilty of not investigating such a simple and easy to solve case. And I call it easy because 1 12 and 2 13-year-old students solved this damn thing. Dumbledore, and even a good half of the adults seated in the seats around me, cringe in guilt and regret at this. Yet after everything I felt, believed and realized, I am just done caring about the man's ability to feel guilty about anything. I know that I am on the verge of losing myself to my irrational anger and pain, and so I just keep talking. Even though I know that, with every word I speak and every bit of knowledge that I admit to have known, I am just fueling my own rage. There is just one thing that sets you apart from the rest of the staff, Dumbledore. Your other titles. You were already a member of the ICW by the time Myrtle died, and you even became its head after your defeat of Grindelwald. And I looked it up. Here I dig back into my satchel and pull out a few small books that I managed to acquire over the years, often through Hedwig or another owl delivering my order or me paying a friend to buy the book for me in either Diagon Alley or Hogsmeade. Parseltongue is indeed considered a dark form of magic, in England. According to these international books about arts, gifts and talents, parselmagic is actually used by healers in Asian African countries. Apparently, the magic is incredibly pure and thus has a strong healing factor. A lot of people gape at me, some of them because they probably realize where I am going with this, others in sheer disbelief. Yet I only vaguely notice this as I have one of the books open in front of me on the bookmarked page and I'm rereading the text in order to keep myself calm. Then something distracts me. I can personally vouch for this. My private healer back in Egypt is, indeed, a parseltongue. I have sensed their magic washing over me several hundred times in the past 7 years now. I can honestly say it's like a Patronus emits its waves from inside you. I feel an intense wave of gratitude for Bill as he speaks. Mostly because his words and their tone work wonders to repel the disbelief many seem to feel. Yet the tone of peaceful delight also has a calming effect on my raging heart. I nod at him and say, and there lies the problem. You could have easily questioned Myrtle, learned about the entrance and the basilisk as Myrtle was also nicely descriptive of what killed her, and then gone to request aid from your ICW buddies. Especially after your defeat of Grindelwald, I can only imagine how much people were internationally jumping at the chance to help you. But if they helped you, you wouldn't be the great Albus Dumbledore anymore. And yes, that's exactly how I think of you. These last words seem to truly, genuinely hurt the man. The twinkle in his eyes is gone and his shoulders are slumped, as if he feels personally defeated. Yet the only thing this sight does is enrage me further. This man dared to steal from me and now he feels hurt that I hate him over it. This thought makes it incredibly hard for me to stay leaning against the wall, the solid form no longer helping me remain calm. But then, just like this morning, a hand is on my shoulder and I look up. I hadn't even realized I had gone to staring at the floor in front of me. Amazingly enough, it's not Ron or Hermione that stand with me. It's Tonks. The Auror smiles at me and gives me just the smallest of nods. But these two gestures help me release a lot of tension from my form. I take and release several breaths to calm myself down and hear Madame Longbottom ask me if I might need a calming draft. I shake my head in answer to her question. Instead I move away from the wall, yet I move myself in such a way Tonks is standing at my side. And her hand remains on my shoulder as a sign of silent support. Yet at the same time I'm also grateful for this new, more personal rock for me to hold onto as I do this. The basis of my problem here, Dumbledore, is that you wasted an opportunity for 50 years and that a young 11-year-old girl had to pay the price for it. And what's worse, Hogwarts is supposed to be the safest place on Earth, so how come the dark magic wards didn't detect that damned diary she was tricked into taking along? Utter silence is my answer. Not just from Dumbledore, but from the hall at large. Everyone is silent as they digest my words and realize, especially the Weasleys, that I'm right and that the trauma their youngest had to suffer through could have been avoided. And while Dumbledore's whole form proves that he actually, genuinely regrets this whole thing, I can't help two thoughts. Does he regret that the event happened or that I am pointing this out? And does he realize that this occasion wasn't the only one that could have been avoided? Dumbledore seems just too unwilling to give me a response. Either that or the man is just waiting for me to tell him about his other follies. Regardless of which option it might be, I take advantage and go for the latter. Well, I suppose that covers the 50-year time gap between Myrtle's death and Ginny's terrible first year. I guess we can move on to my own first year now. Don't worry, everyone, it's not nearly as bad. Still problematic, though. The old man himself tries to argue this and says, "There is nothing I could have done that you could use against me, my boy." I really don't know what angers me more. That the man still refers to me as his boy, or that he dares to question me when he knows how long I have been stewing on this. That he still believes himself untouchable and unable to make mistakes. Really? Because I'd like to disagree on that. Let's go back to the end of my first year, shall we? You got an urgent missive from the ministry. You're Albus Dumbledore. You have a phoenix who can travel through flame. You can apparate within Hogwarts due to your job. You can create a port key as if you're summoning a light. And you probably had Fudge's flow address at the time. You took a broom from Scotland to London. The reactions to this statement differ. Dumbledore himself hardly seems to find the situation problematic or worthy of mention. A few of those around me are gaping at the man, others groan or slap themselves on the forehead. As if they feel like they made his mistake. I'll admit, you can consider this an old man's mistake. That you used the same method back when you realized you had been tricked away from the school, is a different story. And yes, you could argue that you believed that your staff had the situation under control, that is until you, as you yourself said, crossed paths with Hedwig, my owl. That should have alerted you, made you realize the situation was dire enough even your staff wasn't able to handle it, and it should have made you decide to use other forms of travel. At the time you still had three right there available for you. Port key, phoenix and apparition. You chose to keep flying. I don't know whether it's my blunt choice of words or my harsh tone, but Dumbledore looks as if he is realizing the severity of the situation here. I also noticed that, while I spoke, the group that appeared has gone to come stand behind me. Funnily enough, I can feel Snuffles' wet nose press against my leg behind me. In the presence of so many, especially the Weasleys who are known Dumbledore supporters, behind me helps me greatly. Yet again I feel as if my anger at the man is in balance with my relief and gratitude for those who stand by me. I draw great strength from this as I decide to take the next step of my plan and say, now, in order to properly have you realize the severity of the situation when it comes to my third and fourth, I need to have Dobby bring 2 more people here. The Diggories. And these words seem to do the job as suddenly Dumbledore aims his wand at me and growls, I will not let you accuse me of murder, Harry James Potter. The sight of the greatest wizard to have ever lived angry at me is terrifying. Yet because I have my friends behind me, I keep firm and state back, and I won't let you hurt my friend by accidentally missing whatever spell you plan to shoot my way. Lower that damned wand, Dumbledore. And amazingly enough, my voice is echoed by those behind me and even a few of those in the audience around me. Dumbledore seems in battle with himself for a moment, but then he complies and growls. You better have a strong case here, young man. And the fact that, for the first time since we met, he doesn't use an endearment says it all, yet I don't care. I just stare the man down and growl, Dobby, go check to see if the Diggories are available. For several minutes a tense silence lingers over the courtroom. Almost no one seems even willing to breathe. Dumbledore has lowered his wand, yet he stares straight at me. I can't quite feel his power coming off of him like I did in Crouch's office, but I can still clearly sense and see his abhorrence that I am not backing down from my claims. I am just staring back. A moment later the Diggories appear and both look deeply shocked to find themselves in the courtroom. I see Mr. Diggory turning to Dumbledore and instantly I step in. Mr. and Mrs. Diggory, thank you both for coming. I don't know what Dobby told you before he brought you here, but allow me to explain the situation we're currently in. Headmaster Dumbledore over here, as I have come to realize over the days since the third task, could have prevented Cedric's death, and while I was called here for a case of underage magic, now I'm here to bring this evidence to light. Among other things, I motion for Madam Bones. The Diggories look at her and the woman growls, you don't want to know. Trust me, Amos, I would consider this only slightly below what happened to your son, but as I said, only slightly. The two share a moment and then, like the twins, chorus. Please, tell us. I nod at them and comply. The situation with your son is not that dissimilar to the situation with Ginny, though I will leave the explanation behind that one to Mrs. Weasley and Bill for later. There is one easy way that Dumbledore could have prevented Cedric's death, and even everything that went wrong with the third task in general, and a sign that, if he hadn't ignored it, would have indirectly led to Cedric's survival. I'll start with the action. And for that, I only need to point at one person. I had spared a short glance behind me when the Diggories arrived. Now I'm facing Dumbledore once again and have my back to my friends. But I don't care for this and just aim a thumb at William as I say. Bill is an Egyptian curse breaker. He broke into tombs, worked on warded graves and did all kinds of other stuff. I know, Ron told me plenty about this and so did Bill himself last summer. So why didn't Dumbledore ask him to check the wards when Bill was at Hogwarts for the whole day before the task even started? Silence is my answer while I stare the man down. What deeply infuriates me is that the man has a look of genuine shock and self-loathing on his face. He really up to this point hadn't thought about that. The thought just hadn't occurred to him at all. I also grit my teeth when William speaks up and says, to be honest, I share in Dumbledore's guilt in this one. I could and should have offered my services. I should have taken the fact that Harry was entered into a dangerous tournament against his will more seriously and should have offered to see if I could make things easier for him. Dumbledore smiles, but then Mrs. Weasley growls and says, you were only there that one day, William. Albus had means available to him all year to do so. He could have hired you at any point after Harry was entered. He wouldn't even be breaking the rules, he would have been seen as doing his duty to protect his own students. His job. It really says a lot that Mrs. Weasley is the one to argue this, though it doesn't surprise anyone that, afterwards, she compliments Bill on his noble sense of responsibility. At the same time the whole exchange brings me a great sense of relief and helps me calm down. I give the group behind me a short smile, but when I turn back to Dumbledore, that smile is gone once more. The man, actually, admits that he is indeed at fault here, a first since I started. I wonder if the man is making a last-ditch effort to redeem himself or if he's genuinely regretful. I decide to test him. It's nice of you to admit fault, Dumbledore. But will you admit fault about your lack of response to the prophecy I told you about a year before the event that predicted a prisoner's escape and Voldemort's return? The man whitens, yet I get the feeling that it's not out of guilt. What both disgusts and confuses me is that he suddenly looks at me as if I betrayed him. I really want to snort at this ridiculous notion, but I know I need to keep strong and firm. Yet then something startles me. Before you even think of denying my friend's words, Minister, I'd like to remind you of something. Young Hermione turns to Fudge and suddenly I feel as if a whole other person is standing there. The easy way that the girl held herself with confidence is gone and so is her light sense of arrogance that, I admit, makes her fit very well within this hall. Instead, a young lady who is incensed with someone and who is ready to turn into a raging mother dragon in order to defend the person the culprit harmed or wronged is standing in front of us all. I already felt a deep sense of awe and respect when I saw young Harry stand face to face with Dumbledore and in front of a whole group of people who actually supported him and not the older man. Now I feel the same emotions as I look at the young woman before me, who says, "Back to you, Fudge." And no, I won't call you Minister. That title is something that deserves to be respected. But like Dumbledore, you and your actions have lost my respect. You dare to accuse my best friend, a teenage boy, of lying about the reason he is an orphan. You even dare to turn an entire nation on a child. But I dare you. Would you have dared to pull the same backstabbing stunt, if James and Lily Potter were still alive? I don't look at Fudge, because I already know the answer. Instead I look around the room. And many of those seated above us are looking uncomfortable, regretful and guilty. Some are cringing. Others are rubbing the back of their necks. Others have turned red. Only a fair few are looking unabashed and are, instead, smiling at Hermione. Amelia and Augusta are a few examples of the latter group. I thought as much. You all are taking advantage of a young man, just because he's an orphan. You're abusing a horrible situation and making it worse. You lot should be ashamed of yourselves. And you call yourselves our governing body. I don't need to look at Dolores or Percy to know that they are furious and glaring at Hermione. Dolores especially, because her disgust with Muggleborns is well known. But Hermione is right and Umbridge seems smart enough to know that now is not the time to speak up. Hermione, however, isn't done yet. And next to that, Fudge, to make matters worse, you're not just abusing a horrible situation, but you're doing it in such a way that it makes you a lying hypocrite. Don't. I know what I'm talking about. Back in my third you met with Professor Flitwick, Hagrid, McGonagall and Madame Rosmerta. It was during the Christmas Hogsmeade weekend. When you came in, you took a seat at a table that was right next to mine. The reason you didn't see me was because of the Christmas tree between our tables. Either way, you went in there to discuss the Sirius Black situation with Madame Rosmerta. That alone is a problem, but I'll get back to that later. Because another topic that was discussed that day, Fudge, was Lord Voldemort. And when Madame Rosmerta asked you if you believed him to still be out there, you said, and I quote, "I must rise again." HPPOA Chapter 10, the last few pages. Sorry, I am not taking any risks here. Instantly utter silence fills the entire hall as everyone is gaping between the young girl and the astounded Fudge. The man splutters and tries to deny this. But this is the wrong thing to do. Hermione glares at him, furious that he is still denying his actions, and snarls, "Dobby. I don't care what they're doing, but bring any student. WHO was at that Hogsmeade weekend and WHO is currently decent here right now." And for some reason this makes her friends gape at her and makes the youngest redhead whisper, "Did she just do that?" Even while the whole floor is filled with almost 50 other students. A lot of them shout and scream and ask what is happening, where they are and why they were brought here. A few even shout we didn't do it, which makes the Weasley twins snort and mutter, "Amateurs." Their mother frowns at them, but then Hermione repeats her quote and asks, "Did you all hear Fudge state this when you visited the Three Broomsticks over during the Christmas Hogsmeade weekend or not?" Her question silences the group at large and then they all turn to Fudge with gaping mouths and wide eyes before one of them shouts, "You disgusting prat. You dare to call Harry a liar on something you yourself believed in only a year and a half ago. How cold-hearted and cowardice can you be? Percy shouts the girl's name, Penelope, and tells her to respect the Minister for Magic, but she screams back, I don't care if it's the Queen of England herself. Fudge is lying and endangering us all. And that you still support him is pure sick and the whole reason I broke up with you. You are sick, twisted and pathetic, Percy Weasley, and a disgrace to your family. To this day I don't get why your dad hasn't disowned you yet. You would deserve it a whole 100 times over for how you're treating him and your siblings. Percy is openly gaping at her, but when I look behind me, I see that most of his family is in agreement with the young woman's words. Then suddenly I notice that to me, very familiar black dog is standing in the center of the group of Weasleys, Kingsley Shacklebolt, Alistair Moody and young Tonks. My eyes widen as I remember the one other time I saw this dog and I recognize him for who he is instantly. And then suddenly it hits me. This is my chance. This is the chance I have waited for. That I have waited 13/14ths of a year for now. Instantly I step up and say, speaking of Sirius Black, I've been meaning to address his case for the past 14 years now. I kept being denied by Aurors and other department members for years, but now that we are all here, I must admit, I feel the need to speak my mind. Everyone looks at me and I notice a shocked hopeful look in young Harry's eyes. I wink at him and turn to the Wizengamot at large as I say. Everyone who believes Black to be guilty is in my humble opinion dumber than a flobberworm. A lot of people shout and cry out in rage and one screams you dare. To which I instantly and coldly reply, yes, I dare. Because I am the only one who has been thinking straight these past 14 years. The only one who didn't let that one night affect 11 years of memories, but who used those 11 years to study and question the events in question. The only one who looked beyond the 24 hours between the Potters being betrayed and the Muggles being killed and who also studied what happened in the weeks before the Potters went down under. The only one who questioned all these events. And the only one who remembered one vital fact. James Potter was a prankster. Anger is still present with a lot of those around me, but they are also now truly curious about my words and where I'm going with this. Their curiosity is making them hold their tongues. I smile at them all to show them that I mean well and that I know what I'm talking about. I turn to the group and ask, Fred, George, how often do you guys, when at Hogwarts, tell the staff that you're going to pull a prank on Tuesday and then let it go off on, say, Sunday? The twins laugh and yet, they prove that they take my attempt seriously as only one of them answers, all the time, Mrs. Diggory. A prankster can't call him or herself a prankster if they don't know how to create a ruse. I wink at the two as I aim at them with my thumb and forefinger and say, exactly. Now apply that mentality to an order meeting that took place 2 weeks before the Potters went down under. Dorcas Meadows had just been personally killed by Lord Voldemort. Get over yourselves, you bunch of chickens, and yet he had been able to do this, because someone betrayed her location to him. Because of this, according to friends of mine who were in the order at the time, Albus here spent a good 20 minutes reminding them all of the importance of loyalty to the right cause, how he trusted them all to see the light eventually, how confident he was that they would turn themselves in at the right time, but also how everyone else had to be careful and cautious at the same time. Basically he preached about trust, confidence, distrust and secrecy for 20 minutes. And after he preached about the latter one last time, suddenly James Potter declares Sirius to be his secret keeper. Come on, people, think here. And even Amos, who often heard me complain about the lack of intelligence within the wizarding world, looks shocked as someone in the audience whispers. The declaration was ruse. Black was a decoy to protect the real secret keeper. Instantly I throw up my arms and shout, finally. Exactly. I have been trying for 14 years to get you sorry lot to realize this. I notice that, for some reason, Fudge is sweating and looking over my shoulder at the group behind me. I turn around and see young Harry Potter beaming at me as if I just awarded him 7 years of Quidditch World Cup trophies or something. Instantly it clicks with me. Harry knows that Sirius is innocent, as do those that are currently hiding his animagus form between them, and has tried to convince Fudge of this at some point in the past. But like me, he was blocked. I smile at the young man and silently tell him, leave it to me, I got this. Harry nods at me, a huge grin still on his face. I turn to the group and spot something else that can help me. William, you used to work in Egyptian tombs, right? Tell me, how often did you spot skeletons that had been caused by someone being blown up? And more specifically, how many of them still had fingers? William, an equally large grin on his face, steps forward. Instantly the others in his group move so that his spot is taken and that the dog between them is still well hidden. But I'm pretty sure I'm one of the few who noticed this. In all of my almost 7 years of working with tombs, I have encountered a total of 378 skeletons that were a result of someone activating a detonation trap or falling victim to a curse of similar nature. Only 34 of them still had more than 3 fingers left. One of those was only a year old, and while he had lost 2 fingers to the sands of time, the other 5 were lost to the explosion. And of all of these skeletons, 350 of them still had skulls, hip bones or other sturdy bits of their skeletal bodies. But other brittle portions, such as indeed fingers, were often missing or gone. This was even the case with skeletons we found within graves, sarcophaguses and other similar locations. Even a skeleton that had been encased within a gravesite that was full of preservation potion and on which a strong stasis charm was active only had a thumb left. The other fingers had been lost to time as the body was over 3,250 years old. Though the goblins considered it a miracle the thumb was still there when the body was found. I absolutely love how the young adult is being so thorough in explaining about all of this, just to prove a point that I am sure many of those around me have already realized. Yet I can't help myself. After 14 years of being denied, I just have to press on. So how high would you rate the chance that Black would have been able to blow of Pettigrew and only leave a finger? William was grinning earlier, but now he looks stern and says, I know Sirius Black. I went to Hogwarts only 4 years after he graduated, so there were still plenty enough stories of his accomplishments going around the castle, both before and after Halloween. Because of this I know he would have been incapable of doing so. I nod, but I also noticed something else. While William was talking, the group that had been standing with Harry had moved. They had moved to stand with the chair that was in the center of the room. Already I know why. And so, after I nod, I turn there and ask. So, what did happen to that traitor, Sirius? The whole Wizengamot turns to the chair and many of them scream, yell or shout. Sirius is seated in the chair, one hand on the armrest and his wrist on the still open chain and the other resting on his crossed leg, a playful grin on his face as he says. He cut off his own finger and used the animagus transformation that James and I helped him achieve in our 5th year to escape me through the sewers. He then hid himself with a magical family so he could keep an ear out for news on his fallen master. Also, for all of your efforts on trying to clear my name and because you were the only one who believed in me for the last 14 years, I consider the life debt you owe me repaid, Nella Diggory. And while some had scoffed or tried to argue against his words, the news about the life debt silences the whole hall entirely. I smile at him, but at the same time my mind is analyzing the newest bit of information, the one thing that always confounded me. I think back to everything that happened around the time that Sirius escaped, but then young Hermione speaks up again. Don't bother, Mrs. Diggory. I'll take it from here. I nod at her, but then Fudge shouts, how could you possibly know any more of this? And what could you possibly know that makes what Black said make sense? Again Hermione stares him down, as if he's the stupid little first year and she's the teacher or something. First of all, anyone who was a student at Hogwarts in 1993 knows that Remus Lupin was both a friend of James Potter and Sirius Black and a werewolf. So that James Potter, who I looked up and discovered was a Transfigurations prodigy, helped his friends become animagus is easy to understand for anyone who thinks things through. Second, you yourself handed Sirius the reason to escape Azkaban and then told Madame Rosmerta about it that same fateful Hogsmeade weekend. You told her, and through her me and all these students, that you handed Sirius the Daily Prophet. But it wasn't just any Daily Prophet, it was the one that had the Weasleys in it. And if anyone knows anything about common garden rats that miss a finger, it's your own assistant. Tell me, Percy, did you by chance find Scabbers in November of 1981? Percy whitens and stares at Hermione as if she just signed his death sentence. The look on his face and his silence both speak volumes and prove the girl right once again. That doesn't prove anything. Dolores tries to argue, but Hermione gives her a deadpan stare and argues. It proves everything, because the picture that had that very same rat on it, was 12 years later in 1993. Dolores glares at the young girl and obviously wants to argue against her words, but then someone on the floor turns to Sirius and declares, "That's why you went for our common room on the one night we were all in the Great Hall. You never wanted Potter, you wanted Pettigrew." Sirius nods and another, obviously also a Gryffindor, gasps and says, "And why you attacked Ronald's bed after our match against Ravenclaw. You didn't know that Crookshanks had already eaten Scabbers." But at this Sirius' face turns foul and another gasps as she says, "He hadn't. Granger's cat hadn't eaten that rat just pulled a November, 81 again. He just made it look like the cat had eaten him. That's why Weasley was in the hospital wing at the end of the year. Blah, I mean, Mr. Black had discovered that Weasley had somehow gotten Scabbers back and went after him to get to the rat. He attacked him in his own animagus form to get to the rat." Sirius' scowl disappears and he is once again smiling and nodding. "Surely you lot don't believe this nonsense." Fudge shouts, but then the oldest of the group standing around us says, "Quite honestly, considering all the facts, it makes more sense than your nonsense." And Harry's whole face lights up when he notices many nodding, not just on the floor, but in the Wizengamot. Then Amelia stands up and asks, "All those in favor of clearing Sirius Black of all charges?" And it amuses me greatly to see wands light up on the floor and in the audience. Almost the whole room is alight. Sirius has finally been freed. And he is hugging Harry. Crying and laughing and cheering. The group around him going along. I don't care for the crowd around me. I don't care for the fact that they are cheering. I don't care for the fact that they are celebrating something that should have happened years ago. I don't care for how hypocritical they are all being. I really don't care for anyone other than the young man in my arms. Harry is trying very hard to keep his tears at bay while he laughs and cheers along with the rest of us. Remus and the others had also enveloped me for a while to hug me in congratulations, but Harry just keeps holding onto me through it all. And I am too happy to care or to tell him off. But then a nervous cough reminds me of the fact that I am not just here with my friends and those I have grown to love over the last year. The sound of the cough instantly lets me know that it's Fudge and I smirk. And before the man can open his mouth, I speak up. "Fudge, I know what you're going to say, so let me stop you before you say something you might regret. I don't care about you or your ministry enough to even accept one damned Canute. However, I am a Black and I know how important image and tradition is to you and your crowd. Because of this, I am willing to offer you a compromise. You sign one document of my choice as Minister for Magic, with a line in the contract that no successor of yours or other official can void said document without valid legal reason, and you let the ministry pay for my street Mungo's bills to recover from Azkaban. Give me that and I will consider the compensation for my time wrongfully imprisoned paid up." Fudge seems genuinely startled and concerned. And finally that damned bitch, no Umbridge, speaks up and asks, "What document, exactly, are we talking about here, Mr. Black?" I want to roll my eyes at the distrust in her voice, but instead I smirk and answer. "An adoption form that will allow me to make Harry my son and make sure that bastards like that monster back there can never get their hands on my boy again." I know that my words shocked Molly and Harry, and maybe a few others, senseless as Harry tenses in my arms. I also know that I will probably have Molly on my neck sometime soon as she probably thinks that I stole her shot or something. I sincerely don't care what the mother of many might think. I keep my focus on Fudge and ask, "Do we have a deal? The form, your signature, that one line in my bills paid. I mean, it's either that or you bankrupt the ministry in order to pay for my compensation. My father may have been worthless when it comes to keeping my mother in check, but he was shrewd and he knew the law inside out, including all the useless we'll never have to use those laws. And anyone who stays more than 3 years in Azkaban unlawfully is allowed a compensation of, don't scream, 50,000 galleons for each subsequent year." And despite my warning, several voices still shout and scream in horror. Fudge also whitens at the sound and I'm sure Hermione is already calculating how much money the ministry would owe me if Fudge doesn't accept my deal. The girl gasps and whispers, "That's a total of 500,000 galleons. 50,000 for the first 3 years and 450,000 for the 9 that followed." And even though it shouldn't be possible, Fudge, Percy and Umbridge all whiten somewhat more before Fudge screams, "It's a deal. I grin at the man's face and the frightened tone of his voice. A few others nod feverishly in agreement with the deal and others breath sighs of relief at the man's shout. You mean it? A soft voice whispers into my ear and I pull Harry apart enough that I can look him in the eye as I say. Listen to me, Harry. My original plan, once I had Pettigrew in my grasp, was to offer you a place to stay, get you used to living somewhere other than your aunt and uncles, and then maybe offer the adoption over Christmas or your next birthday. But yes, I was always, from the moment I laid eyes on you back in 1993, planning to adopt you and make you my son. Because the minute James laid you in my arms for the first time on July the 31st back in 1980, you became my son. James and I always agreed. The whole Godfather thing was just an official title to explain to others, random strangers and people we didn't have to care about, why I was so close to you. But your parents saw how much I loved you when you were born and they accepted that. They were exhilarated that you meant that much to me, even then. And that hasn't changed. Not in 15 years. Nor will it ever, Harry. I really don't know why Harry gasped and tensed when I told him that I love him like a son. I don't like it, but I know now is not the time and this is not the place. I also know that someone is doing something to keep Molly in check and keep her from screaming at me or arguing with me, like she has been doing this past month. I am not looking forward to that argument, but I also plan to, if possible, avoid it until after Fudge has signed the form. If that woman is willing to argue how I feel about and behave around my boy, I will counter her words with official evidence. Hopefully that will silence her. Harry had hugged me with his head resting on my shoulder when I was declared innocent. Now he cuddles his face into my chest as he pulls himself close against my form again. This gesture brings tears to my eyes, but the moment is short-lived. I realize, as Harry pulls away, that it was just an attempt of his to reassure and settle himself. I give him a small nod of understanding. Bill's paw. I may not have spent as much time with Sirius as Ron, Hermione or my mum. But unlike Hermione and my mum, I see Sirius for who he is. I have used every chance I got to really get to know the man and I didn't let anything other than what I heard from him influence my opinion of the man in the weeks since we came to live at his place. I'm sure Mum will be really upset if she finds out that I don't always stay over for dinner or for the night because I feel embarrassed over her constant arguments with our host. And I know that, for reasons that are completely biased and unfair, Mum is currently furious and under the belief that Sirius stole her thunder or her chance or something. I am already dreading the idea that, once this is all over, someone is going to have to mediate between the two. But then Mr. Diggory proves why he and his family were always in Hufflepuff. Sirius, I won't deny that your offer was an excellent one or that you didn't just speak straight from deep within your own heart. But considering everything that happened today, I think we are all forgetting one vital question that needs to be asked to one important person. Harry, is this what you want? I breathed a huge sigh in relief as Mr. Diggory had noticed Dad slamming a hand on Mum's mouth and hissing at her to be quiet. The man is probably genuinely curious, but he also obviously had the ulterior motive of wanting to shut my mother up before she could unleash her famous temper and embarrass my entire family in front of the Wizengamot and all these others. I'm sure that, like myself, Mr. Diggory already knows Harry's answer. He just needs Harry to say it himself to silence any potential naysayers or rumor mongers that might come up later. And Harry's answer is heartwarming. Yes, Mr. Diggory, it is. And I'm not just saying this because it was suddenly offered to me. I'm saying this because this is what I want. I'm saying this because this is the second time now that Sirius has offered me a home. I'm saying this because Sirius is the only one who actually genuinely did so. I'm saying this because I know that Sirius genuinely cares for me. I'm saying this because I trust my parents when they named Sirius my guardian. I'm saying this because Sirius has been proving himself for the past 2 years now. I'm saying this because Sirius hasn't even let the Ministry or Azkaban stop him from doing right by me or doing what's best for me. I'm saying this because, while this is only the first time he has actually said it, I have always known that Sirius loves me. I'm saying this because, after everything I've been through, I just want the family my parents died to give me all those years ago. I'm saying this because, in truth, I am just too damn tired to continue being the self-reliant teenager I have been all my life. I'm saying this because But then Sirius stops him and whispers, "We get it, Harry. You can stop now. We wanted a genuine answer, not for you to feel like you had to defend yourself." Harry turns a little red and, just like before, he cuddles with Sirius to regain himself. Yet then he shocks us all as he coldly states, "Oh, don't think we've forgotten about you, old man." And as he steps away from Sirius, he looks at Dumbledore as if he wants to execute the man on the spot. Only then I realize that Dumbledore had cheered along with everyone else and that he had been grinning the whole entire time. The man had obviously thought that Hermione reminding Fudge of that one Hogsmeade weekend and Mrs. Diggory working to get Sirius released had meant the end of his horrible mistakes being brought to light for all to learn about. Obviously this is not the case. Still it shocks and even slightly worries me that someone so young can look at someone with such a deadly look of hatred on his face. After all, I've pointed out everything you've done wrong these past 50 years. Not questioning Myrtle about her death, even though it was obviously related to the Chamber of Secrets and could have solved the whole issue. Not getting a curse breaker involved when you discovered that some kind of dark magic had entered the school and was affecting your students. Not using a method of travel other than a lousy broom when you realized that you had been tricked away from your school and responsibility. Not sharing the prophecy and working together with others to make sure its message about Voldemort's return wouldn't come to pass. Not asking Bill to check up on the wards when you could have known that a Death Eater could have altered the Portkeys' destination. And, of course, that disgusting contract that you put up with Gringotts back at the start of the summer between my second and third. The funny thing is, the timing of that contract's creation makes me know exactly why you did most of this. You betrayed yourself, old man. Dumbledore looks genuinely shocked and confused, yet his look turns into one of horrified fear when Harry raises a single hand up and taps his forefinger against his scar. After all, at the end of my second, you told me quite a bit of interesting information about my scar and what happened the night I received it. That really is the one thing Skeeter actually got right, wasn't it? Well, to an extent, that is. She only got bits right, even about that. The boy saying this reminds me of both the article and of how it had been a point of argument between Fudge and Dumbledore that same fateful night. I myself hadn't really put much faith or thought behind the whole thing, but after Dumbledore, during one order meeting, told us about the connection between Harry's mind and Voldemort's, I had offered my services to help Harry heal from this. Sirius had wanted to take me up on the offer, but Dumbledore had vetoed him and told me that my focus should be on getting the goblins on our side and that, if the situation got dangerous or worrisome, we could reconsider my offer. Now, because of how the boy believes there to be a connection between his scar and the contract, I wonder whether or not Dumbledore merely brushed me off or not and why I even agreed with the man's decision in the first place. I don't plan to make the same mistake again. Instead, I turn to Sirius and ask, "Lord Black, seeing as how you have now been reinstated into your rightful position as Harry's guardian, do I have your permission to examine Harry's scar and, if necessary, provide him aid in accordance with the experience I have gained while employed as an Egyptian curse breaker?" And naturally, the man instantly consents. Dumbledore tries to stop me, but I ignore him. I move over to stand in front of Harry, who helpfully raises his fringe up. Normally I would simply start up with a few safety charms and a dark magic detection charm. But because I now already know how old this curse could be, I instantly move onto a charm that will help me determine how dark the spell is. The result horrifies me. I quickly recast the charm a second time and then, just because I don't want to believe my own readings, a third. Each time the results are the same and my heart sinks through the floor in horrified realization of what the reading means, especially for Harry himself. In the back, somewhere in the distance, I hear several voices. With some effort I discern my mum, Harry's, Sirius and Dumbledore's. This last one helps me to focus as my horror is instantly replaced with furious rage. I want to turn to the man. I want to yell at the man. I want to scream at the man. I want to curse the man. I want to hex the man. I want to kill the old man. But I haven't been a successful curse breaker, who has sometimes even offered the position of something much higher in station, for the last 7 years without reason. With effort I suppress every last one of my emotions and especially the ones that can distract me from doing what I promised Lord Black to accomplish. I turn to Harry and tonelessly ask him, "Please name 7 people who have your undivided trust." Harry looks at me deeply worried, but he complies. Sirius, Ron, Hermione, Fred, George, Mrs. Diggory, Lupin and Mr. Weasley. Sorry, that's 8. Harry grimaces in the end, but I don't care. I also don't care about my mother snapping at Harry for not mentioning her. I turn to the ones called and cast a spell to make 2 cups of delicate china float in front of each of them. When I say go, slap the 2 cups together with the tops on top of each other. I need to determine which of you is the fastest in this task in order to accomplish my task. My siblings look at me, the twins worried and Ron even a little frightened. But I keep a passive face and state the word go. The whole group responds accordingly. I cast a spell and request them to repeat the action twice more. Each time I cast the same spell before I say, very well, Lord Black and Ronald have the fastest timing each. They tie as Ronald had the fastest time the first time, Lord Black the second time and they were equal down to the millisecond the last time around. Now for the next test. I transfigure the cups in Sirius and Ron's hands into a large ball, the size of a quaffle, but then softer. I am going to make these balls vibrate and twist. Your job is to keep the dot you see atop of the ball aimed upwards to the best of your ability. On my mark. The 2 nod, Ron's fear now replaced with a look of solemn acceptance. I cast the required spell and keep it active for 3 minutes. After the spell ends, I cast another to properly make a deduction and say, Lord Black is the winner. Ronald was close, but Lord Black's grip was slightly firmer. Ron doesn't look upset, he just nods in acceptance while Sirius resumes his place beside Harry. I cast a new set of spells on the mentioned group and state. Fred, George, you 2 have the strongest mental and emotional endurance levels. You are best suited to keep yourselves focused on something positive, even when you are face to face with a negative situation. I require both of your help with this task. The twins nod and while I know that what I said wasn't entirely true, it's not entirely false either. The spells weren't just meant to determine who was best at this, but also who was best at helping the other accomplish this. And while Lupin and Mrs. Diggory were slightly better at the former, the twins being better at the latter is currently more vitally important to my task. So instead of requesting him to aid me in this part of the task, I turn to him and ask, your Patronus is a 4-legged creature, right? For my task to succeed, I require Air Potter to lie on the floor and for a 4-legged Patronus to lie on top of him. Can you provide this for me? Lupin nods. A few times now I have heard and ignored the worried cries of my mother as she calls out my name. Again she repeats her cry, but then father says, Molly, Bill told us about this. This is that work mode he told us about back in Egypt. He's fine, he's just truly focused. I nod to confirm this and turn to Harry. The boy is already lying down and someone has conjured bedding for him to lie on. I nod at this and state, Lord Black, please seat yourself so that Air Potter's head is on your knees. Not on your lap, on your knees. Fred, George, sit at Air Potter's sides and hold one hand each. The 3 comply and I watch as Lupin comes to stand with the group. Fred, George, I am going to cast a spell on your hands. It will transfer positive energy into Air Potter as long as you both keep your focus on a truly positive memory. Do you understand? The twins nod and Fred states, we got this, William. I believe him. Lord Black, I don't believe I need to explain you your portion in this task. I require you to keep Air Potter's head straight upwards throughout this proceeding. Also, once I have removed the last of the dark magic of his scar and placed it in one of these cups, I move all of the floating cups over to form a halo around Harry. I require you to slam that one and the one that was last filled before it on top of each other. Sirius nods at me and I can almost see myself as I am now in the man. There is no grin on his face, his grayish blue eyes are stern and sharp and his whole form is tense. Mother, if I were to raise my hand up and show you 3 fingers, I require you to come over. This will mean that I will not be able to remove a bit of this magic from Air Potter's scar without tearing his skin apart. If this happens, I require you to heal the injury as I will be too busy removing the dark taint. Can you accomplish this task for me? Mum hesitates and a look of intense worry adorns her face. Mrs. Diggory steps up and says, I will take your mother's place if necessary. I nod in acceptance. Lupin casts his Patronus and a bright silver wolf appears. It goes to lie down on the boy who lies on the floor before me. Lupin is on Harry's right, so, while Fred is seated at hip height, I crouch down at waist height next to the boy. I cast the required spell on both encased hands and then focus on the infected area, the scar on Harry's forehead. I aim my wand at it once more and use a few spells to directly link myself to the magic within it. I sense its connection to its creator, but also sense a faint connection to several other forms of magic of similar nature. Instantly I work to transfer the link from the creator to the other objects. I work methodically and carefully as I have no desire to let the creator know of what I am doing, let alone that I am in contact with one of his creations. After a few minutes I succeed. Alright, I have successfully redirected the connecting magic from the creator to other objects of similar magical nature. This means that, while I work on this taint, the creator will not be made aware of my actions or that I am in the presence of one of his creations. I will now proceed to clear the target of the taint upon their person. Be warned that, even though this is the least painful procedure, the taint of the dark magic within the area of contention. Harry doesn't even look as if he feels insulted or hurt that I am not acknowledging him as a person. He just stares at me with a look that proves he is ready for whatever I will have to do to accomplish my task. I feel nothing. I cast the required spell upon the scar, as well as a quick spell to keep the fringe away from the scarred area, and slowly, meticulously, start to work to pull the dark magic out of the tainted area, one tiny bit at a time. For several minutes my focus is solely on the dark magic, bits of its removal, the cups in which I place the bits that have been removed and the charm that makes sure that the bits continuously move on to the next cup once I have placed a bit in the following cup. One thing that slightly distracts me is Harry himself. I have proceeded with this procedure on humans almost 20 times now, and each time that it happened on someone below the age of 20, they would be in excruciating pain, regardless of the Patronus and the other spell. Harry, however, only grunts, has his eyes tightly shut, and even seems to be trying to help Sirius keep his head straight. At first I wonder about his endurance levels and how high those could be. But then another thought occurs to me. One that is most concerning. Does Harry not allow himself to show to others that he is in pain? Why not? I store this information, this possibility and this theory away for later deduction and resume my work for several more minutes. Little by little, like grapes being plucked and eaten, the dark magic is removed from Harry's scar. I can clearly feel the effects of the Patronus wolf and the twins and how well they are all helping to keep Harry's pain at bay. Yet as my spell takes more and more, I notice it. I raise my wand-free hand and hold up 3 fingers. Misses. Diggory is instantly at my side. I count down on my fingers, and as I count down, I pull the third to last piece, the second to last piece and the final piece, which is more the size of a snitch than a grape, out of the tainted area. Naturally it gets pulled apart and starts to bleed, but while Mrs. Diggory quickly goes to work to cleanse and heal the wound, I turn to Sirius. The man has already slammed the 2 cups that have the goo in them together, and I tell him to twist the 2, one clockwise the other counterclockwise. And while the man complies, I cast every sealing and locking charm that the goblins have taught me over the years. For 2 more minutes I keep this up, from the corner of my eye noticing Harry's skin getting sewn back together with only the lightest of scarring tissue still visible. Finally I tell Sirius to stop as I cast the last required spell, and while I cast the reverse spell to the one cast on the twins' hands, I slump back on the back of my feet. Like always exhausted after such a task. Mentally, magically and emotionally. But at the same time I feel most successful. I did it again. I whisper as I grin at the sealed cups. William, I hope you know what you just did. I wonder how many people still feel genuinely shocked at Dumbledore for trying to reprimand me. I don't care and retort, yeah, my job. The same job I've been working for the past 7 years now. I look at the man as I say this and snort. The man looks genuinely shocked and horrified, as if he can't believe that I have worked with this horrible kind of magic before, let alone so often. Did he think I just unlocked locking charms on doors of tombs or something? I think to myself. Then Dumbledore proves that he misunderstood my statement entirely as he says, William, I am well aware that this is quite hypocritical of me to say, but if you truly had this much trouble finding all these objects of this one horrid. But before he can continue sprouting his nonsense theory, I interrupt him and say, wrong. It's not that it took me the last 7 years to go after objects of a similar nature belonging to only one person. I've been working for the last 7 years to destroy various objects of similar nature that belong to. Not 1, not 2, not 10. But 62 of those sick bastards. Moody quickly summons a chair behind his old friend as Dumbledore caves through his own legs in shocked horror at my statement. Yet after all that Harry has helped me realize today, I stopped caring. I tiredly get up and ask, where in the name of magic do you think that kind of magic originates from? Egypt, the land of the dead. Remember. And besides, about 300 years ago, Gringotts Egypt dealt with a good 60 of these cases on a yearly basis. That they managed to get it down to 60 in 5 to 10 years is quite the achievement. It proves their dedication to ridding the world of these abominations. And here's the piece: the resistance. I can use this to trick, trap and kill Voldemort. I've already done so with 62 other idiots like him. Everyone stares at me and Mum whimpers if I'm sure. I smile at her as I know that I have really worried her while I was working. Mum, have you ever heard about Elicourt the Endless Assassin? Because it was me and my team that took him out. And we used the same method. It worked on him and it worked on all those others. For one simple reason. Once these guys discover this kind of magic, they get arrogant and believe that they're the only ones who know about this and the only ones who know about where they hide their containers. But they are hardly ever original with what they use for containers, and they are hardly ever original or inventive with how they work to secure and hide their containers. Usually, within a month of us discovering they know this magic, we find their container. And then we trick, trap and kill them. And funnily enough, we hardly ever have to change tactics when it comes to our trick, trap and kill method. Our method has successfully led to the death of over 5,208 of these bastards in the last century. Mum's concerned look slowly turns into one of relieved pride. All around me, I can also sense and see that others feel equally impressed or relieved. Yet apparently not everyone. I admire your dedication and skill, William, as do we all. However, I fear that there are factors in play in this situation that will ensure your failure. Therefore, oh, give it a rest already. A voice shouts from the audience above us and we all turn to the top left corner of the rows of seats right of Fudge's stage. A man wearing a long robe of which I am not entirely sure if it's black, brown or a dark blackish blue colored walks down. His face is partially hooded, but his scowl is clearly visible. Great magics of the realm beyond, can you grow a lick of sense here, Dumbledore? I mean, for crying out loud, I work with those orbs and even I don't take their words for gospel as bad as you. Your level is just pathetic, seriously. Instantly I get what is being said here and I growl. Let me guess, there is a prophecy, which is the whole reason Voldemort went after the Potters all those years ago. And because of that fateful night Dumbledore would rather scar a 15-year-old for life than rely on talented, experienced dark wizard catchers and fighters. The unspeakable aims my way with his forefinger and with that tells me that I got it right on the mark. I growl, cross my arms and shake my head as I mutter, and I thought you couldn't sink any lower. Now all the hardships you put Harry through make sense. They were all tests, not just to see if Harry was capable of fulfilling the prophecy, but also to make him feel more and more emotionally, mentally and physically exhausted. And you wanted him like that because of this. I hold up the sealed cups. You believed Harry needed to die and that him dying a noble death would weaken Voldemort enough that someone else could easily step in and take the monster out. You've been raising the boy that saved my sister like a pig for slaughter for years. Well, no more, Dumbledore. Your disgusting plans end here. The man doesn't seem concerned over my words. Instead he still looks as if he is sure that I will fail and that I am just prolonging the inevitable failure of my actions or something. The very look on his face fuels the rage within me. But I quell it and turn to Fudge. Minister, I need a private, exclusive press conference in about 35 minutes. Pick about 4 newspaper journalists who will be the first to report that Sirius is innocent and has been declared as such. And make sure that the conference is in the atrium. Why would we do that? Umbridge asks and her voice sounds as if she feels insulted that I am ordering her boss around. I don't look at her as I know I will just roll my eyes and upset her if I do. Because it will take me about 20 minutes to get my team from Egypt here. Because I am the only one with actual experience on the trick trap kill method. Because the world deserves to know that their hero is going to have a father back in his life. Because you all want what I want, for Voldemort to finally end up 6 foot under and stay there. Umbridge is clearly deeply upset that I had so many answers to her question. Yet the answers also convinced Fudge. He nods at me and tells Umbridge and Percy to get it done. Part of me wants to ask him to just let Umbridge arrange the whole thing, as I kind of want to have a talk with Percy and give him a piece of my mind. But I have worked with meticulous goblins long enough to know that I can't stray from the current path while at this stage of the procedure. Instead of that, I listen as Fudge declares that the Wizengamot will reconvene later, once I have fulfilled my task. Mum wants to object to this, but Kingsley speaks up and asks, "I'm going to assume that the reconvening is not to continue Harry's hearing, is it, Minister?" To the shock of some, but relief of others, Fudge shakes his head and says, "It's for me to sign the form and for Dumbledore to receive his punishment. He has neglected the safety of his students for too long, all because of his insane beliefs that a teenager could destroy a monster of a murderer, just because of a few prophetic words. I couldn't have said it better myself." I watch as the Wizengamot leaves the courtroom, a few of them offering the students who had been brought in here by Dobby the house elf to bring them back from whence they came, others whispering with each other about what happened. Then I crouch down to where Harry is still lying in Sirius' lap, though he's been pulled up a little. "Listen, Harry, just leave the rest to me, okay? I got this. You've done enough. You're talented, but you've done enough." Harry gives me a weak nod, but when I want to get back up, he suddenly reaches out and grabs my hands in a death grip. I look at him and he whimpers, "Don't leave me." I frown, but then I notice it. Harry's eyes are glazed over slightly. I softly run a hand through his hair and whisper, "Harry, you're at the Wizengamot, not the maze and not the graveyard." "It's me, Bill. I'll be fine, Harry. I won't let Voldemort kill me. I'll have my team, they'll keep me safe." Harry's eyes clear up slightly, but the glazed look is still slightly there. "No spare," he whimpers, and while it kills me to see this side of him, as it proves that he never got any help with moving past what happened to Cedric, I repeat his words with confidence. "No spare." Harry lets go. Half an hour later. Atrium, Ministry. Everything is going exactly as I had expected. The press conference was arranged. The seating of the members of the press went exactly as I wanted. And Alistair told me that, while everything was being set up, he spotted someone who is suspected to be a Death Eater remaining in the hall when the rest of the crowd was made to leave. It had also been very easy to get my team to come here. Just like the few times we would split up and discover something that would require the other group to regroup with us, all I had to do was put the cups in my utility belt and tap the pocket twice with my wand. This sent a message to my team as well as one to the Gringotts branch in Egypt and the one in Diagon Alley. Another tap sent a full report to my superior on what happened at the courtroom and how I came across this opportunity. By now everything is in place. The conference portion of the hall is set up exactly the way I want it. The Death Eater, who believes we didn't see him sneak off, is hidden close by. My team has managed to keep out of his sight while they took their own positions. And the trap is set. Fudge stands beside me, a nervous look on his face, which I am sure isn't a common occurrence when it comes to holding a conference like this. I give the man a reassuring smile and, after I made sure that we are out of the line of sight of the Death Eater, I point out where my team is hidden. "Just start the conference, let me interrupt you and then give me the floor. Once Voldemort is dealt with, you can hold the conference that you want. Just stick to the plan." The man nods at me and heads for the stage. I wait about a minute or so and follow him after that. Fudge thanks the people of the press for coming and gently tells them that this conference is not because of the trial of Harry Potter. It slightly disgusts me that Fudge might have planned to turn Harry's potential expulsion into a national scandal, but I keep my focus. "Indeed not, Minister. And let me be the first to thank you for following the instructions of Gringotts Bank and its Curse Breaker division so excellently. My superiors and even Lord Ragnarok will be most pleased and sincerely grateful." Fudge is actually slightly shocked that I am addressing him like this, yet this definitely isn't the first time that we used a press conference to trick, trap and kill an undead idiot, as Kathy always calls our targets ever so lovingly and sarcastically. Fudge quickly regains himself and, as planned, gives me the floor. I nod at him and state, "Ladies and gentlemen of the press. While there is much that will soon be made public, I would like to use this opportunity to directly address someone. Tom Marvolo Riddle, also known as Lord Voldemort. And before you say anything, ladies and gentlemen, the The common witch or wizard might be able to be tricked into believing otherwise, but a vault directly tied to someone or their family is a very different story. The vault of Tom Marvolo Riddle, which he obtained in 1937, is still active to this day. It went into status in 1981, but it has, since last June, been revived so to say and has already had a couple of war donations transferred within its confines. Lord Voldemort is very much alive. That is to say, for now. And with that I pull out the cups. Within these cups, I hold his immortality. His method of surviving all those years ago. Shocked awe, disbelief and even fear and anger are shown on the faces of the few reporters that are in the room with me. But my eyes are, while trying not make it obvious or noticeable, on the hidden Death Eater. Especially as I pull an object from my tool belt and throw it on the floor besides me. The shrinking charm that enveloped it dissipates and the object grows to reveal a full-on metal and stone fireplace that is about 2 heads taller than me. This is a fully warded, fully protected, protectively enchanted fiendfire grate. The protective enchantments have only been refreshed, checked and improved an hour ago, so there is no need for concern. However, this is the reason behind my statement of Lord Voldemort being alive for now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd pull out my cameras if I were you. I am about to throw Lord Voldemort's immortality into this here grate. Instantly every reporter has their camera in hand, but at the same time a blasting curse flies over their heads, straight for the grate. I keep standing and while one reporter screams for me to look out, the spell disintegrates upon contact with the stone. The reporter gawks. Like I said, protectively enchanted. I grin, though this time I make sure to purposely gaze at where the spell came from, where I know the Death Eater is hiding. The man growls and snarls. Your spells might be able to withstand me, but they will not be able to withstand the Dark Lord's wrath, Weasley. You and your whole blood traitor bunch of scum will pay. And, just like I expected and wanted him to, he slams several fingers onto the mark on his arm. I remain calm, even as the reporters start to scream in fright as they obviously realize what this action might mean for them. I just gaze slightly over the man's head and nod. A spell flies at the man from the back and he's stunned and falls to the ground a moment later. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. You will be the members of the press that, unlike last time, will have first-hand witness to the demise of Tom Riddle. One of the reporters calls me a loon and asks me how I can be sure of that. I keep quiet for a few moments and then someone appears that, while I had expected him, I hadn't at the same time. Lord Voldemort, or better said Lord Riddle, has such a horrible visage that he makes most of the corpses, inferi, dead werewolves and skeletons that I saw during my time going through tombs and graves look like a group of beauties. Just the look of him makes me understand why Harry is still suffering from what he went through in June. Yet at the same time that just makes me hate and despise Dumbledore's inaction all the more, even as the man speaks. Yes, William, how can you be sure? Why do you believe you can put an end to me? I take the cups in both of my hands and twist them to undo the spells and charms I had placed on them earlier. I unseal the lids and open them, to nothing. Because I already turned you mortal 10 minutes ago. Because I already threw this piece of you through the veil. Because I had already linked this to your other pieces before I did. Because you're as predictable as all others that fell for my conference trap. Voldemort growls that he doesn't like to be tricked or lied to. I keep my grin and my cool, regardless of how horrifying the man looks and advise him not to take a step forward then. The man spots the thin thread I had placed in front of him before he arrived and smirks at me. Yet as he does exactly what I wanted him to do. He apparates over to the center of the group of seats for the reporters. The seats are set in a diamond pattern and there is quite a bit of space between the 4 of them. Voldemort's grin widens as the reporters around him scream, cry out and dash out of their seats. But I grin back and say, oh, and because I just lied to you. And because I never work alone. Not on a case like this. And only then the man realizes that I had my wand in my hand the whole time as I give it a simple twist. At the same time each member of my team jumps out of their hiding places and join me in this motion, their wands aimed at Voldemort. The man raises his wand and wants to conjure a shield, as if he's expecting to be cursed. Instead of that a huge cage made several layers of lime green glass appears around him and traps him within its confines. The man drops his wand in shock. Instantly my team and I respond. We dash for the cage, press the tips of our wands against the bottom of the now floating cage and twist our wands half a turn clockwise. 2 of my team are on either side of the cage and the 5th member is standing on the right at the back of the cage, while I am on the left at the front. We make a few more twists and turns with our wands while the tips remain firmly placed against the glass. All the while Voldemort looks around at us frantically and then grabs his wand. But when he wants to curse us, no light of a spell leaves his wand. There, anti-oxygen and anti-magic wards activated. You have another 2 to 3 minutes left to live, Riddle. I would say it was nice meeting you, but you're a melodramatic megalomaniac with serious daddy issues and an inferiority complex. I still don't get why these press conference traps keep working. Do Dark Lords just not watch the news or keep up to date on their peers? And I still don't get why you keep complaining. We just saved England from being pulled into another war. Rejoice, will you? Am I the only one who wonders why he hasn't started gasping for breath yet? I can't detect any magic to improve his lungs, so, what's up? My partner directly on my right spoke first. His partner on his right spoke up next, followed by my partner directly on my left. And when the partner on her direct left spoke up and asked her question, my partner in front of me, who is unfortunately born mute, instantly starts to cast. Her wand waves across the glass box several times, both to determine the reason behind this strange phenomenon and to fix it. Then she aims at Voldemort and taps her left forearm with her wand before she crosses it across her throat. I get her sign language thanks to years of cooperation. Voldemort had a curse on the dark marks that allowed him to drain their wearers. He would have killed them to drain them of their life energy, just to survive the cage. I think to myself as I realize what Elise put a stop to. And as I watch our other spells take effect, there is only one thought on my mind. That is just sick. And as I say this, Voldemort drops dead. Someone in the group of reporters whimpers and asks me how I was able to keep calm like I was. I turn to her and answer. I have worked this job for 7 years now. I learned early on that, if I let my emotions get the better of me, I will get myself killed. And yes, I know that Voldemort is terrifying. Don't believe for a second that I wasn't scared out of my mind when I saw him appear. But I have long since learned to redirect my focus and adjust my mind and heart accordingly. I didn't see Voldemort, I saw an undead bastard. As Jack here so lovingly calls our targets. The third guy who spoke up earlier gives me a cocky grin at the words and shrugs as he says, anyone who uses that kind of magic is a bastard and a moron. You turn yourself immortal, you're really just painting a target on your back, one that will sooner or later be hit by people like us. It's just that simple. Someone yells that this was Voldemort. I wonder if they even realized that they called the man by his supposed name. Jack shrugs and says, and he has the same reputation as Elicourt the Endless Assassin. We took him down after about half a year of searching for these bloody bits of crap of his. How is this? But then Anique stops him and reminds him that he didn't live through 11 years of terror with Voldemort. Jack grimaces and mutters an apology. He explains how he sometimes loses himself to his job and stops showing empathy to the victims of the people he hunts down, but how this is never his intention. That he's working on himself with that. Then Monique speaks up and says, oh by the by, Madam Bones. You might want to send your squadrons across the land. I noticed that, before Elise broke Voldemort's connection to his Death Eaters, that our little friend here was in pain and reaching for his mark. I think that, if you were to scour the land, you'll find more like him. Should help you identify and arrest his followers. If they have this mark, they're working for him. Also, Monique bows down to where the man is still in chains and runs her wand over his chained arm a few times before she nods as she says, just like I thought, the spell that creates this mark requires full acceptance from both parties, the caster and the receiver. Anyone who has this mark, accepted it of their own free will and chose this fate of their own accord. So anyone who has this mark is really one of his. No imperious curse bull or anything of the sort. The spell doesn't accept that. Fudge and Madam Bones are both wide-eyed, though Fudge's eyes are wide with horror while Madam Bones, or wide with glee. Fudge asks if Monique is certain and Monique replies that she'd be willing to teach him her spellwork. Fudge refuses, but thanks her. You know what? Because so many upstanding citizens were accused of this last time around, how about you lot make a compromise deal with Gringotts? We will freeze the accounts of anyone arrested who has been shown to have the mark and will keep them frozen, until said person accepts a questioning under Veritaserum. With Madam Bones as the one asking the questions. A neutral party who has no interest in either power or wealth, only justice. Fudge hesitates for a moment, but then he nods in acceptance with Marcellus' proposition. Marcellus, who also shares the leader position with me, turns to the group and says, "All right Monique, you and Elise head for Gringotts. You explain this latest compromise with Lord Ragnarok and Elise gets started on our full report of this event. In the meantime Jack, Marina and I will take our dead friend over here to the Department of Mysteries and throw his sorry ass through the veil of death. After all, we don't want wannabe DEs to turn this guy into an inferi now, do we?" Everyone frantically shakes their heads and this time I join them. The team splits and once they are gone, someone turns to me and asks. "So, we were bait." I groan and roll my eyes as reporters ask this question all the time after we use a press conference to lure our target towards us. No, you were not bait. It was just a fact that, when the ministry holds a press conference, the atrium is emptied of all its passengers. We knew this would attract the attention of at least one or two Death Eaters and so, while the minister and I prepared the conference, Mateen got close to the day in question and set the trap for Voldemort. We needed a large, preferably mostly empty bit of space to set our trap and needed a public setting that, for one reason or another, would draw attention and have the potential of enticing our target to fall into said trap. This was not us using you as bait, this was us working alongside the press to both create and spread good news around the country. Plus, there are currently things going on down in courtroom 10 that would have inspired the minister to hold a press conference anyway. We just decided to hold two instead. One to trick trap and kill Voldemort and one to officially announce everything of importance that happened today. The four reporters and some of their photographers nod in acceptance of this and turn to Fudge. The man looks a little flustered, but grunts and says, "We are currently working out the final few details of the important announcements that will be made during the second press conference. Until we're done, please enjoy the cafeteria on the 5th floor." The reporters nod and a few of them thank the minister for his hospitality. These compliments seem to help Fudge regain himself and he motions with his head for me to follow him. We take a lift with Madam Bones and while we wait for it to descend down to level 10, Fudge says, "All that's left really is Dumbledore's punishment for his neglect. Oh, and I need to get that adoption form as well." The man quickly presses another button and just in time too as we reach the right floor a few minutes later. "Wait here for me, will you?" Amelia and I nod, though we both step out to let the lift move on to other floors. The man leaves for the left side of the hallway and once he is out of earshot, Madam Bones hisses, "There is no way we can send that man to Azkaban. Even if we let a good reporter and Rita Skeeter work together to announce everything he did, there will be people out for our blood." I nod at this, even though the notion really disgruntles me. I add to it that, even with Dumbledore's incredible magical ability, I don't believe he'll survive Azkaban for very long. He's the one man Voldemort feared. If we leave him inside Azkaban, wandless, the DEs will tear him to shreds before the day is done. They've been stuck there so long, I doubt they haven't taught themselves to fight dirty the Muggle way. Madam Bones had already been looking grim and my words only worsened the dark expression on her face. But then I smile and say, "But I know Harry, Madam Bones. And he has proven something today. When he does something, something that he has been preparing for some time, he does so prepared. I have a feeling that he already has a punishment in mind." Madam Bones smiles at me and asks, "You know Potter better than me. My niece Susan has never really managed to get close to him over the years. What do you think he will have thought of for the old man?" But before I can answer, Fudge already returns, a little red-faced, but with a large grin on his face. "Sorry it took so long. I had to make sure to add that line that Black mentioned about others not being allowed to dispute his adoption of Potters without legal reasoning." I smile at the man, yet almost roll my eyes when he mumbles his curiosity on why Sirius might want that. "Because Dumbledore sent Hagrid to the Potters the night they were murdered. Hagrid didn't care two nuts about Sirius' role as Harry's godfather, he only cared for his orders. Sirius wants to prevent something similar from happening." Fudge nods and mutters how that makes sense. Madam Bones goes on and says, And of course there will be plenty of people who will be out for blood when they hear that their hero was adopted by a supposed mass murderer. They won't accept Sirius' innocence right off the bat, and when they hear that Potter is living with them, they'll try to take him away, to save him. That line of yours will give Black legal rights to have them arrested for kidnapping, a chance he didn't get 14 years ago. Fudge is a little red and mumbles that he could have seen that coming. Madam Bones and I shrug and we simply wait for the lift to get down to level 10. And in companionable silence we descend the stairs and head back to courtroom 10. Most of my family is waiting outside, and so are Sirius, Harry and Remus. Yet it takes me a minute to notice that Tonks and Kingsley aren't with them. But then I remember that Madam Bones had sent the Aurors away on Monique's recommendations. My focus switches from that to Mum and Sirius. Mum definitely looks tense, and I easily discern that Dad has gone to stand between her and Sirius. But while Harry and Sirius are standing a bit away from the group, neither of them looks tense. The others look up as they hear us approach, and Mum's eyes instantly zero in on the document in Fudge's hand. But Dad puts a strong hand on her shoulder before she can turn to get to us. Mum looks at Dad and Dad shakes his head at her. I sigh in relief. Dad doesn't often take on the headship of House Weasley, but that is because he prefers to be pleasant instead of stern. He taught me why at young age, and I have always understood and respected his reasons. But I know Dad, and I know that, if he takes his headship seriously, he can be a force to be reckoned with, and one even my mum's fierce temper isn't able to break. It's this fierce kindness and loving temper that make my parents perfect for each other. Remus walks over and says, "Apologies, Amelia. Tonks and Kingsley decided to stay behind when you issued your orders. They felt it was their job to keep an eye on Dumbledore instead. They swore to go out and follow orders once you returned." Amelia nods and Fudge asks about the Diggories. They stayed behind with Tonks and Kingsley. They felt that, considering how powerful Dumbledore can be, 4 sets of eyes and 4 wands are better than 2. Also, we managed to get him into the center seat and, well, when he put his hands on the armrests, the chains instantly clamped shut. He tried to resist this, but the chains wouldn't budge or open. I have to admit, it shocked me how quick they reacted. The 3 of us nod at him and we all head inside. The members of the Wizengamot are still present, and so are the students that Hermione called on. I see that many of them have family inside the Wizengamot as members are talking with each other, their offspring or friends of their kids. It almost looks like Platform 9 3/4 on September 1st, something that brings a smile to my face. But not everyone is as happy about this as I am. Madame Umbridge has also remained behind, and she's scowling at all of the conversations taking place. Kingsley and Tonks are the first to spot us coming in, with my family, Sirius, Harry and Remus behind them. The duo of Aurors head over, salute to Madam Bones and depart from the room. And then a horrible sound reaches my ears. Hem hem. The cough is faker than some of the fake goods that con artists try to sell unsuspecting tourists back in Egypt. It also sounds so sickeningly sweet and slimy, I feel as if the sound is stuck in my ears and it makes me shudder in revulsion. Many others shudder as well, and a lot of foul looks and scowls turn to look at Umbridge. The woman either ignores this or she's delusional and thinks that these people are smiling at her, as she smiles as sickeningly sweet as before and says, "The minister has arrived. I believe it's about high time that the members of this noble body return to the duty that is theirs and theirs alone, and that these sweet children return to where they belong. Run along now, all of you." Some of the parents turn to look at Fudge, while everyone who is with them scowls and glares at the woman, probably because her tone at the end sounded as if she believed she was talking to toddlers instead of teenagers and young adults. But then Harry steps up and says, "With all due respect, I disagree. Like I have been thinking about revealing the acts of neglect of Albus Dumbledore for some time now, I have also been thinking of suitable punishments. And these students, the future of our world, are the best when it comes to helping me iron out the details of what I had in mind. Especially because what I had in mind involves Hogwarts, their place of education and stay for 10 months a year." Umbridge scowls and argues that it's the job of the Wizengamot to trial and judge criminals. At this Harry shrugs and says, "That may be true, but I never pressed charges against the man." Instant silence follows his statement. Harry shrugs and says, "And besides, I really just want to present my ideas, nothing more. If afterwards these young men and women think that the Wizengamot is better qualified to punish Dumbledore, fine by me. I just wish to be heard." Umbridge wants to argue once more, but then someone stands up and says, "Seeing the burden that Mr. Potter has carried upon himself all this time, it's really only fair that we hear him out all the way." Mr. Potter is being fair and only wishes to be heard. A few men and women nod and I step up as I say, "And let's not forget, it's thanks to him coming out about what Dumbledore did that we are now rid of Lord Voldemort. If he hadn't done what he did today, none of the events that followed would have occurred either. We owe Harry our safety. If his reward is our attention, then he certainly has mine, 100%. Many people nod at this, but Harry scowls at me and growls, "You're selling yourself short, Bill. Sooner or later, I'm sure you would have asked to examine my scar and then the same events would have probably occurred. And let's not forget, it's not by my wand that Voldemort was felled, but yours. And unlike 14 years ago, I refuse to take the honor of something that others did. All those years ago, I wasn't able to argue against those beliefs because I was too young to understand them. Not this time." Many in the hall are shocked, awed and amazed by Harry's words. Then someone asks if Harry really doesn't believe that he was the one to save us all back in 81 and Harry feverishly shakes his head. "No, I never believed that for a second, not even the first time I was told the story of the events. And after third year, and those dementors that kept coming at me, I learned the truth. It wasn't me that saved the world that night, it was my parents. My father, who faced Voldemort in order to give my mum time to get me and run. And my mum, who refused Voldemort when he told her to step aside. I don't really understand how their sacrifice is different from other parents who sacrificed themselves for their kids, or if there was some other factor in play that added to the sacrifice and the magic it contained, but I know this. On that night, I didn't do one damn thing. I was an infant and a witness to the whole thing. Nothing more, nothing less. And this is just a fact. One I will be coming back to at a later time. It interests me that Harry is looking at Dumbledore while he says this. The look of disappointment on his face is even more interesting. Yet others seem less interested as someone asks what Harry has in mind in regards to punishing the neglectful old man. Dumbledore seems deeply disgusted with the fact that he is called neglectful and Harry notices this as he argues. You can't disagree with that statement, Headmaster. Not unless you are willing to admit that, whenever you were thinking of something to do at Hogwarts, you didn't have that little prophecy of yours either in mind or in the back of your mind. The man grimaces, yet he neither admits nor denies this accusation. And the look in his eyes proves that this because he knows the words to be true. It fills me with a little relief to see the man regretting this fact, yet I can't help but think. Too little, too late. Harry turns away from Dumbledore and while the kids and students who had been with their parents return to the floor in the center of the room, Harry starts to speak. Thank you all for your time. I'm going to start by admitting that, at first, what I have to say might not really sound like I have punishing Dumbledore in mind. And to an extent, that is true. What I want to accomplish with my plans will go far beyond just teaching the old man a lesson for his neglectful behavior of the past 4 years or so. It will also help our school, and hopefully through that the wizarding world in general, forward. And the funny thing is, my plans have large consequences created by small actions. The boy's words really pique the interest of many of those around me. A few people whisper curiously towards each other, but they quickly fall silent when it looks like Harry's going to continue. Harry turns to the large group of teens standing with him and asks, I don't mean this to be racist or anything, but could I get the Muggleborns to stand up front with you guys, please? The group looks at each other curiously, but the Muggleborns comply. Harry gives them all a smile and a grateful nod. Then he turns back to the Wizengamot at large and seems to study the members for a moment or two before he turns to a tanned man with long, curly brown beard and sharp green eyes as he asks. Sir, if you could study your favorite subject at the best university, which is the equivalent to Newt Year at Hogwarts, for a full year, would you give up your wand, broom and ability to use the flow for that? The man blanches and mutters that he would consider it, but that he doesn't really like the idea. Harry nods and when someone asks him about his question, he gives an answer that shocks me enough I almost feel floored. Because we are asking something similar of our Muggleborns every time we invite them to Hogwarts. Except instead of a wand, flow and broom, it's their food, their music and their favorite games and books that we ask them to give up for 10 months a year. Or do any of you Muggleborns disagree? Everyone in the Wizengamot turns to look at the group. The others in the group don't follow this example. Instead, those who are standing behind or next to the Muggleborns move a little closer and put comforting and reassuring hands on their shoulders. Most Muggleborns give their peers grateful smiles, and then one of them, a young girl, with curly brownish blonde hair and beautiful yet strange purple eyes, takes a step and says, "No, Mr. Potter is indeed right. The magical world is beautiful, but it is just so different. And yes, I know, statute of secrecy and all that. But is it really so wrong for us to want a few candy bars on the food cart? Or a Muggle story book in the library? Or something like that? Is that really too much to ask when it can offer us a form of comfort? Or reassurance?" I notice that some people, like Umbridge, indeed seem to think that the girl is right, that it really is too much to ask. But thankfully, the majority of those in the Rosa seats seem to actually feel a little guilty that they never thought of adding something so simple for Muggleborns like her. A few also look as if they emulate with her need for comfort. Funny you should mention candy and books. Those were 2 parts of my 4-point plan. Everyone looks at Harry, who starts to count down on his fingers. Ask about 3 to 5 Muggleborns to spend maybe 5 to 10 pounds on Muggle candy and let that be added to the train food cart on September 1st. See if there are Muggleborns who owns a cookbook on how to make things like pizza, French fries and stuff like that, and ask to borrow the book for the house elves. Ask Muggleborns if they have old Disney story books that they might be willing to donate to the Hogwarts library. And see if maybe a couple of board games or puzzles can be donated to the common rooms. In that last one, only a few, as we don't want to distract from studying. I feel deeply impressed with the simplicity of Harry's plans, yet it takes a few others a few seconds to realize that Harry is done talking. Someone asks, "Wait, that's all?" and Harry retorts that it really is just a 4-point plan, as he already mentioned previously. I fail to see how this will work, Potter. Or how it will serve as my punishment. Dumbledore argues after a few minutes. And as much as I hate it, I silently agree with him. But Harry just smirks at him and explains, "I didn't expect you to understand, old man. So let me explain it to you and everyone else. These actions are subtle enough not to upset the most hardcore purebloods. Offer just enough familiarity to the Muggleborns to help them with their homesickness. Will help the Muggle-loving wizards learn more about their Muggleborn brethren. And the best of all, it will all be done without you present or able to take credit for any of it." And instantly I get what Harry is getting at. Dumbledore sounds horrified as he whispers, "You can't," but Harry keeps smirking and asks, "And why not? Why should you be allowed to keep your headmaster position when you've been so neglectful towards your students? Why should you be allowed to play a role in something you refused to do for 14 years, all because you were waiting on Voldy's return? Why should you be allowed to keep the job you love, when you put a war that could have been and has been prevented above your responsibilities?" Dumbledore genuinely has no answer. I cannot believe how freeing it feels now that I get this chance. For several years now I have been silently observing everything and anything that takes place at Hogwarts. And every time I noticed something wrong, I often spent many restless nights thinking of how the problems could be fixed and the issues could be solved. But it became obvious to me early on, after first year was over, that Dumbledore wasn't going to be interested in fixing these issues until after Voldemort was gone. And the longer this lasted, the longer Dumbledore kept reacting to Voldemort's plans instead of trying to prevent them, the more I grew to resent him. Over and over again I saw evidence that the man would just let Voldemort do whatever he wanted. Over and over again I saw the teachers just follow the man's example without questioning the wrongness of it all. Over and over again, it was up to me and my friends to do the job of the staff, to save and protect the students that were their responsibility. Over and over again my friends and I were rewarded for our efforts, but the teachers also neglected to think of how these events might have scarred us. But unlike Dumbledore, and the teachers that followed him, I never let Voldemort dominate my life. I never let Voldemort be the only thing I thought or worried about. I never made Voldemort and what he might do my main priority. I just made it look that way because I didn't think Voldemort would ever listen to me if I tried talking with him about anything else. But now I have that chance, even if it's not with Dumbledore. Yet this doesn't matter. And the more I talk, the more I feel as if a weight is being lifted off of my shoulders. It takes everything I have to focus on my sense of satisfaction. It's only that sense of satisfaction in the way I focus on it that keep me from crying. Crying tears of relief. I'm sure some people would condemn me for treating Dumbledore like this. That some might hate me for not giving Dumbledore a chance to do what I want to accomplish for the sake of the school. But I don't care for these people. Then Fudge turns to the group of students that Hermione summoned and asks, "Ahem, tell me, would any of you be willing to comply with Mr. Potter's wishes and plans?" Everyone turns to the group of Muggleborns and a nice amount of them nod. And then a few of them make everything even better. My parents have been trying to find a library to donate my old Disney story books to for the last few years now. They'll be more than happy to let me take them to Hogwarts next year. My parents recently bought this blind box full of books at a thrift store. There were at least 4 cookbooks in there and my parents were actually planning to bring those back to the store. They won't mind giving them to Hogwarts instead. My niece told me just the other day that she was planning to sell her collection of puzzles and board games. I'm sure I can convince her to let me take them to Hogwarts with me. And I always buy several boxes full of chocolate on August 31st and then hold a going-away party with my friends and siblings. I'm sure my siblings would be willing to buy a little more so I can take it with me for on the train. The only thing we'll really need is a few extra trunks to store the stuff in. Or at least the books and the games. Otherwise, we're all set. The Wizengamot seems genuinely shocked that the students in their midst are willing to change their plans and accommodate to my ideas like this. Then Sirius, who has brought me to tears once before today, does so again and says, "And while the candy bot might only be good for the upcoming train ride, House Black will gladly donate money to Hogwarts to keep these efforts going. To keep up the provision of the candy. To help supply the ingredients of the meals. And to keep the books, games and puzzles in good shape. Naturally I will desire a contract with Hogwarts ensuring that my money goes to these goals and nothing else." A few people in the Wizengamot and a few students snort at his words. I smile at the man and turn to Madam Bones as I say, "Madam Bones, I know it's a little off topic, but if you still have that clipboard, I'd like to ask you to look at the file I asked you to ignore earlier on today." The woman is startled shortly, but complies. I send another smile to Sirius as she does this and the woman smiles once she has read the letter. Well, it looks like Mr. Potter just revealed to me another truth, Dumbledore. Apparently, the goblins never considered you Mr. Potter's true guardian. This file here is a letter, written by King Ragnarok. And it states the following. "Greetings, Heir Potter. Yes, you are indeed correct to assume that Lord Sirius Black is your rightful true guardian. It is true that Lord Albus Dumbledore claimed your guardianship on November 2nd in 1981. However, he only did so with the Wizengamot and did not verify this with us at Gringotts Bank. As such, while we are not in the possession of the wills of the late Lord and Lady James and Lily Potter, we of Gringotts are obligated to prioritize their wishes over the decisions of the Wizengamot and Lord Dumbledore. I would hereby like to recommend to you to use any and all means necessary to ensure the exoneration of Lord Black so that he can come to Gringotts to rectify this erroneous mistake. Please note that, if you were incapable of arranging this before July 31st in 1997, we of Gringotts will be forced to take measures into our own hands. Be assured that these measures will not let you lose any of what is rightfully yours, nor will they be aligned with the nature of the contract you were shown last summer. We look forward to your compliance. Ragnarok, King of Goblins." Many eyes are wide with shock. Yet I don't think it's because of the same reasons as my own sense of shock. These people are probably shocked to hear that Gringotts never thought Sirius to be guilty of anything, while I feel horrified that my parents' will is apparently missing. I turn around to where my friends are standing and gauge their reactions. My friends all seem equally horrified, though I wonder what about the letter might have shocked them as they might each have individual reasons. Bill seems deeply shocked that Ragnarok wrote a personal letter to me only a summer ago as he is staring at the letter in odd disbelief. Sirius is staring at Lupin questioningly and the latter gives a pained, but confirming nod. Sirius, apparently, silently asked about the missing will. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley are both staring at me and yet there is only care and concern in their gazes, not pity like I had, instinctively, expected. Mr. Diggory, Mrs. Diggory and Moody all have grim resigned looks on their faces. This tells me that they have known about the wills for some time. I want to be angry at Moody for not telling me about this. But I'm not, as I have hardly seen the man since he was freed from his own trunk. I feel somewhat angry that Lupin hadn't bothered to tell me when he was teaching, but I decide to just redirect that anger, for now. Quick warning. I was listening to an audio biography of Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of America, on Audible, before I wrote this chapter. So the way that I word my paragraphs from here on out might sound a little old-fashioned. At least for a little while. Now that we have that cleared up, I have 3 more matters that I feel need to be discussed. Methods that I have been pondering on for some time now, that I think can greatly benefit Hogwarts. However, I will admit that these methods are a little more extreme than my addition plans were. A lot of people seem shocked and startled at my statement, and someone calls out to me from the Wizengamot seats. I realize suddenly that they might misinterpret my words and their timing and sigh before I say. I know that some of you might think that I don't care about any of this. I do. However, my request to Madame Bones to read the letter was merely meant to reassure everyone that the situation in regards to my inheritance is already set to be resolved. Please understand, my intention, this entire time, was for both the contract and the letter to be read today. And because I know my godfather, and soon-to-be legal guardian and father, I know that I can leave this case in his hands. Because of this, I feel we as a whole should further focus on proving ourselves superior to the man who spoke and spoke, but never acted upon his words. Who claimed to be a defender of Muggleborns, but who silently let bigotry against his Muggleborn students go on and on and on. Or am I wrong? I don't question Dumbledore as I ask this. I turn to the group of Muggleborns, many of whom shake their heads. Dumbledore tries to argue this, but one of them, who looks to be about the twins' age, angrily steps forward and says, "At the end of last year, I went to Madame Pomfrey and asked her about the ratio of Muggleborns to purebloods coming to her hospital wing. She didn't give me any specifics or names as I didn't want any, but she did say that she gets about 8 Muggleborns to 1 pureblood every week. And she also said that she gets about 5 blood traitors, aka the Weasleys, the Longbottoms and people like that to 1 pureblood like Malfoy or Parkinson a week. She even admitted that, once a month, she needs to send either a Muggleborn or a blood traitor to St. Mungo's or call a street Mungo's expert to come over. And again, both are for the sake of the 2 former parties, not the Malfoy and his ilk kind of pureblood. A lot of people around me are horrified at these numbers. For a short moment I wonder if I really am Madame Pomfrey's most frequent visitor, but I quickly discard this thought. Then that same horrible sound rings through the Wizengamot courtroom again, and the toad in pink asks, "Is this really the fault of, as Potter calls it, bigotry? Or is it perhaps the fault of poor innocent and unfortunate students who are clumsier than they would like to admit?" Needless to say, the whole room is either gaping or glaring at her. Another Muggleborn steps up and I realize that it's someone in Ravenclaw from my own year, who I sometimes see Hermione walking with when she comes back from Ancient Runes. "You really believe that, ma'am? Because if you do, you can tell that to my back. After all, considering what Hogwarts looks like, how do you explain this?" She turns around and pulls off her shirt and undershirt. And to everyone's horror there are 3 gashes running across the diagonal length of her back, from her left shoulder to her right hip. The woman in pink wants to open her mouth and I wonder what her argument might be, but the Raven speaks up, "And before you say anything, no. I don't take care of magical creatures and I always work alongside either Professor Sprout or Neville Longbottom, who is a prodigy in herbology. Also, I was asleep the night Professor Lupin forgot to take his Wolfsbane potion, just like every other full moon night that year. I have 3 dorm mates who can vouch for this. I also stayed far away from the 3rd floor corridor as I was one of the few students who actually took former Headmaster Dumbledore's words about dying a most horrifying death seriously. And yes, I received these scars in my first. So madam, what would you say, other than a bigoted pureblood who saw me as nothing more than his personal plaything, would cause this? And would you be willing to argue that case against 4 portraits and 3 ghosts that all witnessed the event?" The girl puts her shirt back on as she speaks and some of her fellow ravens are quick to embrace and reassure her as she seems near tears by this point. Someone in the Wizengamot asks why this was never reported. The young girl hiccups before she speaks again and says, "It was. Professor Flitwick was brought to my bed in the hospital wing after the incident and he swore he would bring the culprit to the headmaster. He got the description from the sources I just mentioned, and yet, the bastard graduated in my third. And Flitwick assured me that he argued with Dumbledore for over 4 hours on the matter. So, whose fault is this really? Mine for being Muggle-born, Flitwick for giving up after 4 hours, or Dumbledore for his neglectful ignorance? I know the answer, ma'am, do you? Umbridge is clearly infuriated that the girl is this adamant to state her case and that she isn't given the chance to divert the blame to some other source. I spare a quick look at Hermione and whisper, Dobby, get that girl and her friends out of here. She's done enough. The girl apparently hears me as I am standing only a few steps away from her and her friends, and she gives me a teary grateful smile before she's popped away. I release a breath to release some of the angered tension in my body and turn back to the Wizengamot at large as I say. And that is exactly what I mean. Hogwarts is definitely great and it has its wonders. I won't deny this, and neither would many of the students here with me. But it also has its dark sides, and those have been casting shadows of pain, hardship and permanent injury on too many. Hogwarts can be the place where bigotry is erased from this world. I'm not saying it will be done by the time Ginny or I graduate, but it can be done. It's just not being done right now. And that needs to change. And I have ideas on how. Ideas that I came up with while trying to survive the tournament. I silently think to myself. But I don't voice this as I don't think now is really the time for smart statements or jokes. Thankfully, just like when I was explaining my earlier ideas, I have the full attention of the room. And amazingly enough, the lady in pink seems to be the only one who doesn't want to hear what I might have in mind. I'm sure that there are some in the Wizengamot who have Malfoy kinds of motivations, and I wonder if these people are genuinely interested or if they're just here to spy on me for Lucius Malfoy's sake. Either way, I know I'll need to work hard to convince them. And thankfully I know how to produce the evidence needed to do just that. I also know a few methods that I can play them and convince them to, if only for now, be on my side. I just hope I won't blow it right off the bat as I start. In order for me to explain my first point, and this really is more another point against Dumbledore than against Hogwarts as a whole, I need to bore you all with a bit of a Muggle history lesson. I promise this will eventually become about Hogwarts and wizards again. Please just be patient, and hear me out on this. Some nod in acceptance, others in reluctance, others in clear intrigue. Please note that I got most of this information from oversimplified videos on World War I and World War II. If you find faults or inconsistencies, let me know. I need to take you all back about 80 years. Back in the 1910s there were alliances between Germany and Russia, Germany and Austria-Hungary, and France and England. However, while there were a lot of Serbians living in Austria-Hungary, they weren't all too happy with their leader, the Archduke, and his uncle. So when the Archduke decided to come visit Sarajevo, a town that was full of Serbs and Bosnians, on their national holiday, when they were actually wanting to celebrate their independence and nationalism, that didn't go over well. And one radical group of Serbs called the Black Hand decided, and managed, to assassinate the Archduke. And you combine that with all the other tension that had been growing within Europe due to the unprecedented increase of weapons and the Industrial Revolution, what do you get? 3 words. World War I. This war lasted from 1914 to 1918 and was fought between Austria-Hungary and Germany on one side and Russia, France, England, and later America, on the other. Italy also played a part, and while they started out allied with Germany, they joined England near the end. Now I won't go into detail on this war, but just say that it was supposed to be the war to end all wars. However, while the war ultimately came out in the victory of England and co., the way they handled the punishment of the losing side was, well, in 2 words, messed up. They made Germany into the scapegoat of Europe and made them the sole responsible party for the war and how bad it ended up in the end. Then the economic crisis of the 1920s came about, and Germany didn't just suffer from this, but also from still having to repay the other countries back for the war costs and damages. Now you might think that that meant the end of Germany, but then, a man named Adolf Hitler stepped in. I'm not going to bore you with his backstory, I'm just going to say this. You can compare his rise to power to Grindelwald's and his hatred for the Jewish people to Voldemort's hatred for Muggles. However, I cannot stress how horrible this man was, how he turned Germany into a horrible regime of racist murderers, or how unacceptable he handled his beliefs and methods of waging war, not just against the other countries but against the Jews. You might not want to believe me, ladies and gentlemen, but all these Muggle-born here can vouch for me when I say that, under Hitler's regime, which lasted from 1938 to 1945 and covered all of Europe from France to parts of Russia and even down to Greece, 6 million Jews were exterminated. Men, women, children, all of them. The mood is full of horror in the room. Many of the Wizengamot are turning to look at the Muggleborns in the room. All of them nod to confirm my words. One young girl even whispers, "My grandmother lost her entire family to this. They were accused of being Jewish and were sent off to Auschwitz, a concentration camp. My gran was the only survivor." Silence rings through the room for a long time before someone in the Wizengamot asks, What does this have to do with Hogwarts?" I sigh as I know that the answer won't lift the mood and say, at the end of the war, the whole world agreed that they needed to ensure that someone like Hitler could never rise to power again. They acknowledged that they had handled the aftereffects of the war all wrong and swore to always keep the war in mind. Ever since, on May 8, all of Muggle England celebrates the end of the war and remembers the victims of it. What I'm about to describe is how this day is celebrated in Holland, my home country. I have no intel on whether or not this is the same in England, but I can't imagine it being much different. If it is, again, let me know. I apologize if this sounds rude or arrogant, that was not my intent. They hold a ceremony at a national monument where the Queen and her family, veterans, important officials and guests all come together. Official music is played, speeches are held, poems are read. And at the end, a minute silence. To remember the dead and those that lost their voice and lives to the cruelty of the war and of Nazi Germany. And what does Hogwarts do to remember the 11 years of blood war against Voldemort and honor the fallen, many of which were friends of our own headmaster? They turn Halloween, the day it all ended, into a kids' party and might as well take the first year's trick-or-treating across Hogsmeade. The only reason Halloween was an official affair last year was because of the tournament. But rumors about dancing skeletons of all things were whispered only 2 years earlier. What, ladies and gentlemen of the Wizengamot, does that say about the respect that Hogwarts, its students and the future of this world shows to the fallen? And am I the only one who feels that needs to change? Silence rings through the hall once more, but while no one speaks, many shake their heads. I sigh in relief at this and someone asks me what I expect to happen. I shrug and say, just the minute silence will do. Or maybe let the teachers pick a student who is good with poetry and ask them to dedicate a poem to the fallen and then let them, or if they prefer someone else, recite it on Halloween. Anything other than rumors about dancing skeletons, really. And thankfully, this time, the joke lands and a few snicker and giggle. Excuse me, Mr. Potter, but while your history story was most definitely an extreme experience to listen to, I can't really say that your solution for the problem that came with it matches that. An elderly gentleman comments after a few minutes. I smile at him and state, "This is true, sir. To be honest, I decided to address this issue here and today because I take it, I guess you can say, extremely personal that Dumbledore is so neglectful of honoring those he claims to have been friends with." A couple of snorts and giggles, though a few of those around me also nod in understanding, agreement and empathy. I smile at those few, but my smile is gone a minute later. I suppose I best just name my other 2 ideas and then explain them one at a time. And forgive me if this sounds a bit military, hit wizard-like, but I call my other 2 ideas Operation Houses or Family, and Operation Individual Point. Everyone looks at me with varying levels of intrigue. A few also have looks of concern or light disbelief on their faces, but I don't care for these. I also don't care for the look of disgust and hatred on the face of the Queen of Pink, as I decide to call her. Instead I silently thank Hermione once again as I had noticed something greatly beneficial when her group came in. I turn to the group at large and call Padma Patil, who is a tanned Ravenclaw in my year, over before I ask her. Padma, be honest with me. When you're in Ravenclaw, do you miss studying with your sister? Do you sometimes hate that you can only study with her in the library? And do you, perhaps, anyone else who experiences similar things? Padma smiles at me and answers, yeah, Harry, I really do. Sometimes I even postpone working on my homework just so I can spend the weekend with my sister, and even that is becoming less and less viable as the years progress. And I definitely know a good dozen others, all in my house, who are like me and have family in other houses. Though I will warn you. If you're planning what I think you're planning, you're definitely going to get some contention from a few in my house. There are several students who are right now in their 7th, who take their house pride way too far. It's the whole reason I meet with Parvati on the weekends and in public areas. I've seen these students bully Ravenclaws, just for hanging out with the enemy. They think that, because Gryffindors are brash, Slytherins only use their intelligence for themselves and Hufflepuffs are more practical than theory-based, that all 3 other houses are beneath them. They claim any Raven who associates with the other houses a traitor to the cause. So trust me when I say this, they are not going to be happy with your idea. At least they won't if it is what I think it is. I try not to growl, I try not to swear, I try to contain my annoyed anger at all this. In effort to see all of this done, I try to grin, which is probably just a grimace, and I weakly joke, that depends. Did you guess that I feel like we should have a common room for each combination of 2 houses? One for Ravenclaw Gryffindor, one for Ravenclaw Slytherin, one for Ravenclaw Hufflepuff, one for Gryffindor Hufflepuff, and in time one for the last 2 combos. Gryffindor Slytherin and Slytherin Hufflepuff. I'm not sure I got all of the viable combinations. Can someone let me know? Thanks. Yet to this someone in the group of students speaks up and says, to be honest, Potter, I don't think that last one really needs to be held back. Other than Malfoy, most Slytherins treat us Hufflepuffs with decent respect. They recognize that we work hard for our efforts and our future and respect that. I even have a boyfriend who is a snake. This news really startles me and I turn to look at my own group of friends. Naturally Ron looks horrified and full of disbelief. The twins smirk and I'm already sure that they will be teasing the guy about this later on. Sirius seems both shocked and intrigued and is actually smiling as are Lupin and Mr. Weasley. Mrs. Weasley is also trying to smile, yet her smile looks strained at best, which concerns and confuses me. Well, I can't say I saw that coming, but that's definitely pretty great to hear. And besides, that's what makes me so glad that you guys are here. You can help me define and redefine my ideas, so they can be properly implemented into Hogwarts. Those in the Wizengamot nod along with some of my friends. The group of students also all beam, smile, grin or nod thankfully. Okay, so that just means that a Gryffindor Slytherin common room is still a work in progress as the rivalry between our 2 houses needs to seriously simmer down before that can be a thing. A few of the adults want to argue this, but every single teen who is currently going to Hogwarts, bar Ron, who just scowls at the very idea, nods in agreement. This shocks those that wanted to argue with my earlier statement. Either way, as long as the house elves, portraits and ghosts are assigned to watch the common rooms at certain times, and maybe if we implement a scheduled time that the common rooms will be open and available or something, this plan should work. Though cooperation between the former 3 and the teachers is still going to be imperative. Everyone nods at this and I decide to move on. Mostly because I know I'm going to create chaos next. Next up, the point system. It needs one hell of an upgrade, people. And indeed, even before I fully finish my sentence, almost half the Wizengamot is jumping out of their seats and shouting all kinds of things at me. Mostly insults. And threats to my person. Sirius seems to discern the same as he pulls his wand and puts it to his throat as he shouts, "The next person that threatens my son can expect an honored duel, you lot got that?" "Thank you, Jostanos," wink. And instantly everyone is silent again. But where the others are silenced in fright over whatever the hell an honored duel might be, I fall silent for a whole other reason. What Sirius called me, my son. For the 3rd time today I suppress my growing need to cry. I hate myself over the one tear that runs down my face and I wipe it off before someone can see it. I pretend to have an itch on the side of my nose as I wipe away the tear. But then Sirius makes everything both worse and better at the same time, probably even without realizing it himself as he says, "My son told you all that the point system needs an upgrade. He didn't say that it needs to go. He doesn't want to remove the system, he wants it changed. And besides, he already warned you lot ahead of time that his ideas might be a bit extreme. It might have taken a while and I know that his last plan is only extreme in its need to be able to rely on the staff at Hogwarts, but he did warn you all several times over. And I know my boy. I know he has his reasons. I want to turn away. I want to turn to a corner where no one can see me. I want to have some privacy so I can wipe away the tears of loving gratitude and disbelief that keep trying to run down my face. I want to hate myself for not having expected this already. Sirius offered to adopt me. Of course he is going to prove that he takes that desire seriously the minute he gets the chance. Of course he is going to prove that what he said about how he feels is the honest truth. Of course he would start calling me his son at earliest convenience. And yet I wasn't ready. But I push all of this down and away, for later. I take a few deep breaths and release them as I turn to Padma once again and ask, Padma, I don't mean this rude, but, do you have anyone in your year and house that annoys you, because you feel as if they are continuously undermining your efforts to win points? Strangely enough, I noticed Terry Boot, a boy with brown hair in a bowl-cut hairstyle and dark green eyes, glaring at the both of us, before he gets shocked and scared by the person behind him subtly pressing the other person's wand in the back of his neck. Padma notices the direction of my gaze and nods as she says, yeah, Terry. He thinks that he's smarter than me and doesn't accept that we might be equals in intelligence. Every time I earn Ravenclaw points, he goes out of his way to cause a ruckus and loses my points that way. Each and every time. It's just stupid. I nod in sheer agreement and ask her, and what if the only points he would lose through this, are his own? What if his points don't become your points or your points his, until the end of a semester? How would you feel about that? The girl's answer speaks not just volumes. It speaks a whole bookcase, if not multiple. That would be a dream come true, Harry, truly. Her eyes are full of grateful tears as she says this. Mr. Potter, I can definitely see merit in your idea, but how would we implement this? Someone in the Wizengamot asks me, sounding slightly befuddled. For a moment I wonder if I might have overwhelmed them with all that has happened today. I definitely still feel somewhat bewildered and in awe of everything that happened in only 2 to 3 hours. I turn from Padma, who goes to stand with a few of her friends in the group of students, to the Wizengamot at large and explain. It's just an idea, but for the first semester we can have Professors McGonagall, Flitwick, Sprout and Snape pick 2 students of their house for the 5th, 6th and 7th years. One who is known to work hard for their homework and grades and one who, well, is the opposite of that. Those 24 students, like Padma and Terry, I send an apologetic look at my friends Ron and Hermione, will contribute to this trial period and, by Halloween, the teachers, or perhaps a hired assistant, can tally up the points and see if this works. Personally, and this isn't just because it's my idea, but I think it can. I think it will take a huge burden off of people like Hermione and Padma and will motivate people like Ron and Terry to work hard for their own points, for them to prove themselves. After all, who knows? Maybe by Halloween, Ron might end up only, I don't know, 10 points behind Padma, who is in either first or second place in the trial period. And instantly I just know that I got everyone on board. Ron has a hopeful grin on his face. The twins, thankfully, don't snort in disbelief. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley smile in pride at their son, and the students in the group start to whisper amongst themselves, just like a few people in the Wizengamot. Oh, and to finish it all up, I was thinking of a reward system. This statement silences the whisperers and someone asks about the house cup. I snort and roll my eyes as I state, yeah, one night of victory, a whole summer away from your prize, and then the cup out of your reach in your head of house's office for the rest of the following year. What a reward. A few people snort, others giggle or snicker, and a few either turn red or rub the back of their heads. A few even look shocked, startled and contemplative, which proves that they never thought of the house cup in that way. I really can't fault them. What do you propose, Mr. Potter? I look at Sirius over this, and while the man might not know what I have in mind, he still gives me a reassuring nod. I smile at him, silently wonder when I will start to call him dad like he calls me his son, but discard the notion for later. I was thinking a voucher of a few galleons to be spent in either Diagon Alley or Hogsmeade. And because father needs to visit Gringotts to fix a certain mistake, I believe he might be able to help set up an appointment with the school to write up and sign a contract. Either him or Bill Weasley. And the contract, in simplest terms, would simply promise that Hogwarts will either keep to the set amount of galleons or give the 2 shopping districts a warning in advance if they decide to either decrease or increase the amount. In return, Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley promise that they will accept the term to let the vouchers be spendable in all stores. A lot of heads nod in agreement and acceptance to the idea. I also notice that the notion of earning a few galleons for spending money is really working on Ron's sense of ambition and his drive to win something, a fact that makes me grin widely. Leave that to Lord Black and me, ladies and gentlemen. I'll personally escort him to Gringotts so he can meet with Lord Ragnarok and then head for Hogwarts so I can pick up one of the teachers and escort them there as well. In the meantime, Lord Black can explain the situation to Lord Ragnarok, who I believe will want to contribute to this idea. Alright, let us summarize, everyone. The Muggle-born students before us will arrange for the books, the games, the cookbook and the candy. Lord Black will fund the money needed to keep these 4 aspects of Hogwarts going for the foreseeable future, as long as the money goes to these goals only. Hogwarts will start taking the deaths of Lily and James Potter as well as the others who fought for our freedom seriously on Halloween from now on. Empty and unused classrooms will be converted into common rooms that will be open for 2 houses each at the same time at separate times, at least at first. And 24 students, chosen by the heads of house, will take part in a trial period to see if a change to the point system is doable for the whole school, with a reward system at the end of each semester. And naturally, because of his neglect towards the students and his willingness to give priority to a prophesy over his responsibilities, Dumbledore will be stripped of his headmaster title. A lot of nods. A lot of smiles. Fudge bangs his gavel. The plans are set. I knew that today's events weren't going to go how either Dumbledore or Fudge might have expected them to. Still, at the time, I can't say that I was either. Ron, Molly, Arthur and I already knew that Dumbledore had stolen something from Harry and that Harry wanted to use the hearing trial to get it back. But for that something to be Harry's entire inheritance I never could have imagined, and it just utterly horrifies me. I really don't understand how no one heard me growl furiously when Amelia shouted the accusation, but while he was subtle about it, Moody was the only reason I hadn't jumped Albus "You're dead" to me Dumbledore there and then and ripped him to pieces. Since I've heard that, I've kept my focus solely on Harry and on the knowledge that he needs me. That focus, and Nella Diggory spotting me and giving me a sign that she is willing to help me, kept me focused and kept me from repeating my mistake from 14 years ago. Now finally I am free. Harry will soon be my son. Voldemort is dead, and Dumbledore is pissed, and I love all of that. But I know myself and I know Harry, so I know that both of us are on the verge of an emotional breakdown. But I don't want to rage and scream and shout at the injustice that Dumbledore delivered on my godson until everything has been taken care of. I notice that Augusta Longbottom wants to go over and approach my boy, but I had already seen Harry's stance while he was explaining his last idea. I don't think a meeting confrontation with the Dowager Longbottom is something my son can handle right around now. As such, I make sure to stand next to him, but also slightly in front of him as the woman approaches. And Augusta is quick to spot this. The woman gives me a polite nod and speaks. Lord Black, I am unaware of whether or not you were informed, but in the 5 years since I and my former peers made our grievous error in regards to your innocence, there have been those who have tried to gain access to the Potter fame, through its possessions. I have worked tirelessly to prevent this and to return everything to where it rightfully belongs. Unfortunately, as the letter of King Ragnarok explains, I failed in this desire when it comes to the will of your dear late friends. However, I want you and Heir Potter to be assured that I have not and shall not waver in my desires to reunite Heir Potter with what is rightfully his own. I sincerely hope that my gifts to him these past few years for his day of celebration in Yule have proven as such, and I will strive to continue this effort. Naturally, once you have acquired a suitable living arrangement for yourself and your heir, and if either of you so wish it, I will gladly return all of what I safeguarded for the sake of House Potter for all these long years. I noticed a flicker of confusion to cross Harry's face when Augusta mentioned gifts sent to him over his birthday and Yule, and decide to investigate that at a later time. For now I draw myself up to the height and stature that Uncle Charles taught me befits my station, and I speak clearly. Lady Longbottom, I am truly grateful that, even in times of youth and learning, House Potter has been able to rely on its most faithful ally with House Longbottom. I will gladly meet with you and yours once I have fully determined how much my heir desires to rely on me to guide and care for him and his. Please await my owl. You can expect Precious Hedwig within the next 24 hours, I assure you. While I was talking, my eyes strayed from the woman from time to time and observed others in the room with us. Some of them are standing around us in groups and pretending to be conversing with each other. But my words and the way I held myself shocked most of them into openly staring at me. Even Harry has a surprised grin on his face. Augusta gives me one of her rare grins of pride and nods accordingly. I give her a respectful nod back and Amelia moves over to us from behind the powerful woman. Ready. Unlike Augusta, Amelia proves that she isn't addressing me as Lord Black, but as Sirius, her target of protection during our upcoming trip. And then, of course, Molly has to go and try to ruin everything by taking charge of a situation she has no role to play in. Right, Sirius, you go with Amelia, while I take Harry home with us. You can. The woman tries, but I swiftly turn around and glare at her as she actually has the gall to try and grab Harry's shoulder and pull him back. Harry even almost stumbles backwards in the process of all this, but thankfully he regains himself. My glare also frightens Molly enough she releases him. No, Molly, Harry is coming with Amelia and I. He has carried this burden of Dumbledore's meddling and thievery long enough and now he deserves to see it being brought to an end. Of course the woman doesn't bow down. I hardly expected it out of her. And while I hate her for it, her next words still hold some ground, just not in this situation. For goodness sake, Sirius. He's been through enough. He's exhausted. He needs his. But then Harry does what he always does. He takes charge and says, I'm going with father. And this silences everyone, even Molly. As is your good right, Heir Potter. And Lady Pruitt, I would like to remind you of your status around here. You are the mother of Heir Potter's friend. Nothing more, nothing less. If you had tried what you just tried with my heiress Susan, I would have called you out and refused Susan to meet with your children for the rest of summer. Now because I find myself agreeing with both of you, I feel it's best that Lord Black, Heir Potter and I leave immediately. Good day everyone. House Elf Dobby, if you'd be so kind as to transport us to the chamber between the front doors of Gringotts. Amelia grabs hold of both my shoulder and Harry's as she speaks, and while she is slightly behind us both, I whisper at Harry to hold his breath. Harry breaths in right as Amelia makes the request. And while I had expected her to use her right as DMLE head to apparate within the chamber, the sensation of house elf travel really is similar enough to apparition that my advice helps my son greatly. Still, as soon as we arrive, Harry bends down and gasps for air several times. I'm immediately at his side and rubbing his back to help him clear his airways. After a few moments Harry regains himself and thanks me. I give him a simple nod. I notice Amelia heading back towards the large golden doors. She opens them just far enough that she can quickly and quietly converse with the guard goblins on the other side. While she does this, I turn to Harry and whisper. We're not going back to London after this. Once we get to Ragnarok, call Dobby and have him bring our stuff here. I'm taking us both directly to any Potter property available for habitation. At least once there we can rest, recover and discuss today's events in peace and quiet. And you can recuperate from your burden of the last few years. Harry gives me a truly grateful nod at hearing this and Amelia returns. Amazingly enough she has her wand in hand. I spoke with the goblins. They will allow me to cast a spell upon you both that will make sure you can only be seen by those we're here to see and no one else. Best to wait for Cornelius to have his press conference before we reveal that you guys were here, after all. I definitely agree with the feisty, fiery and very intelligent woman, who both held and broke my heart 14 years ago. A few minutes later we're seated in Ragnarok's office, something I never thought I would get the honor to be allowed to do. The office is made of dark brown amber and marble, which gives the whole room a bit of a cave-like interior. At the same time the shine and state of the marble proves the class and status of the great goblin in front of me. And Ragnarok himself is very, very similar to his office. The goblin is missing an eye and the tip of his left ear. Yet he also has a full head of hair and it is combed and slicked on top of his head very nicely. And his suit's coloring fits his tan and skin color extremely well. This is a goblin who has seen battle, but who has also been leading his people for many, many years. And who knows how to do both with great strength and efficiency. A being who, even without the strength of his gaze, demands respect. And who already has mine. Lord Black, we of Gringotts cannot begin to express our delight at your status being set back to its rightful position within our society and world. Therefore, I will not. Instead, I believe I know exactly why you are here and I will gladly provide any and all aid to your cause. Be it the contract, a potential new contract, business deals or even intel. Now on to the matter at hand, the contract. The goblin proves that he both means business and doesn't feel like loitering or wasting time as the contract in question is already on the table and he rolls it over. Yet this confuses me and I turn to look at Amelia. The goblin notices this and grins as he says, "Yes, Lady Bones has the contract itself. This one here negates that one." Instantly I want to reach for the quill that is set on my side of the desk. But then I recognize the black-looking quill with the sharp tip at the end and hesitate. I look from the quill to Harry to King Ragnarok. The king nods and so I make a split-second decision. I turn to Harry and say, "Harry, listen to me, son. You and I both need to sign this document in order to negate that contract you received 2 years ago. But, before you sign it, you need to understand that the quill over there is a blood quill. It doesn't require ink, because it writes with your blood. It will cause a light scar on the back of your hand, but as long as you don't sign too many documents after each other in a short period of time, your skin is bound to heal." Amelia continues, "Because of this, the ministry considers a blood quill a rank XXX item of importance. That means that, if you ever see it being used outside of an office of either King Ragnarok, an officially acknowledged account manager or a head of a ministerial department, you are to report this immediately. The perpetrator will receive the same punishment as the use of the unforgivables, especially if used on minors like yourself." Harry looks at the blood quill, eyes wide with shocked horror. Already I know that my boy really won't be able to take much more and that he will probably break down as soon as we get home. I know that Ragnarok doesn't like it, but I wait for Harry to regain himself, which my boy does in only a few minutes. He nods at us both, grateful for the explanation. I nod back at him and smile in pride at how he keeps respectfully quiet through all this. Yet while I know that some might consider this me keeping the Goblin King waiting, I know Goblin culture well enough to know that I can read through the contract first. I make sure to do so quickly, but also thoroughly. My eyes roam over each and every line at least twice, sometimes thrice. I feel mostly satisfied, but still find a few points that slightly upset and annoy me. But not too much as I can easily see that they can be edited or argued against. I put my hand on the quill in the holder, but I don't pull it out. Instead I turn to Ragnarok and for the next 10 or so minutes we discuss the 3 points that I disagreed with while reading the contract. Ragnarok agrees to drop one, I agree on a compromise for the second and accept his unwillingness to bend or change the third. As we nod in acceptance to these changed terms and agreements, I pull the quill out of the holder and sign my name at the second line at the bottom. I hand Harry the quill and indicate that he is to sign on the third line. Harry complies, yet his face turns into a grimace of pain as the quill, like with me, bites and stings into his skin as it draws his blood from his hand to write with. Ragnarok takes the quill from my son and signs it without any sign of emotion or pain, which proves to me that he has gotten used to this over the years that he rules. Again the goblin earns my respect. Very well, Lord Black. Now that the contract has been signed, Gringotts will do a thorough sweep and research to find out whether or not our former employee managed to fulfill certain terms of the previous contract before his capture or not. If so, they will be reversed immediately, I assure you. In the meantime, seeing the contract in your pocket of which I can sense the magic right now, I wish to ask you and Harry Potter a vital question. To what extent will you be responsible for Harry Potter's finances and financial future, exactly? Harry and I share a glance and I see that the boy feels quite lost and out of his department. I give him a quick wink to let him know to just trust me and speak. Lord Ragnarok, please consider yourself the official Black Potter account manager for the next 24 hours. I will send you a missive to inform you if this station, if you so desire it, can become a permanent matter or not within the allotted time. The goblin hardly shows a sign of surprise, yet I can read body language well enough to know that he actually hadn't expected this. The goblin turns to Harry, who nods to indicate that he agrees with my desires and plans. The goblin gives me a nod of acceptance. Is there any other way Gringotts may be of assistance to you, Lord Black? Harry Potter. Harry shakes his head, but I smirk and say, due to Albus Dumbledore having recently been relieved from his post as headmaster, I wish to further demonstrate my aversion to the man's presence in my son's life. I wish for Gringotts to set up a restraining order between my son and Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore of House Dumbledore. The man is to keep the distance of 1 great hall table length from my son at all times, is not to approach my son without either my presence, that of yourself or a member of the Potter Alliance, and no person is allowed to approach my son in Dumbledore's name. Doing so will violate the terms of the contract, especially if the person in question attempts to convince my son of any changes to said contract. This violation is to be paid monetarily, but only at first. It is to be a rising penalty from 5 galleons to 50 galleons to 500 galleons, all the way to 5 million galleons. At this point, if another violation is to occur, the person in question, with acceptance of the Ministry and the DMLE, Amelia nods, will be handed over to Gringotts for a more suitable punishment, to ensure that they will not dare another attempt. Naturally, the same terms will apply to Albus Dumbledore himself, though I wish to cut the list of attempts and violations short at 500 galleons. I will not allow this man to attempt to go any further than that, though I know there will be those who, regardless of this, might be tempted to continue trying, thus the other terms. The grin on the goblin's face says everything. It shall be done, Lord Black. Anything else? I can feel my own fatigue settling in. I can feel the adrenaline of everything that happened today leaving me. I don't even need to look to my side to know that Harry is trying with everything he has to keep himself upright. I'm quite sure Amelia feels the same way. I want a full list of available properties. I don't care for their status, only that they are livable. Ragnarok had winced at first, but the wince calms down at the end of my statement. The goblin nods and states, when it comes to available locations in terms of status, I would have only been able to offer you a private room in the Leaky Cauldron, which the late Lord and Lady Potter have continued to rent off for the past 16 years. However, when it comes to livable, there is one other location. Potter Hill on the Island of Wight. The master chambers are the only ones there that are still being kept in check through aid of the few house elves still in Potter service. They had been with more, but years of age and years without serviceable magic has made many of them die out. The chambers should provide for you while the elves clean out the rest of the location. Or at least until I have found and send a proper cleaning crew to other potential properties. I notice that Harry seems shocked that he owns something that is big enough to have master chambers. I wonder if Harry ever even read the full list of things that could have been taken from him if Dumbledore had had his way. I decide swiftly that this is a matter for me to worry about later. I simply nod in acceptance. The goblin nods back and says, if you would please call upon your elf, Lord Black, I will be able to bestow upon him the knowledge on how to transport you and your heir to Potter Hill. A few minutes, and Harry being the one to call Dobby, later it's done. Dobby himself had apparently been trying to keep in his excitement over all of this, and he did an admirable job. Lord Black, I look forward to your missive on whether or not I will attain and retain my newest position. I will discuss further details on the restraining order with Regent Bones. May your gold flow forevermore. I nod my head at his words and reply, and may your enemies cower at your feet. Then, even though it's obvious that my boy is on his last legs, Harry speaks and says, may your ventures prove ever fruitful, Lord Ragnarok. Again the goblin hides his surprise well and he replies, and may your actions bring you pride and prosperity in years to come, Heir Potter. I look down at Dobby in a minute, and uncomfortable sensation. Later my boy and I are seated on a very comfortable, luxurious, king-size 4-poster bed with white wooden beams, white marble with intricate carving headboard and full pillows, blankets, comforters and mattress. The room itself is equally as grand, almost larger than the basement kitchen, is long and full of fine-looking furniture that is also made of either white marble or white wood. Harry gapes as he looks around the whole room. His eyes linger on the floor-to-ceiling windows that cover the entire right wall the longest, and for a moment he seems to lose himself in an attempt to see all of the fields that are visible through them. But I notice how tense he is and how his whole form is shaking with unsettled nerves and nervous energy. Because of this I wrap my arm around him and pull him close against my form. I ignore the worrying way he flinches and shortly tenses up. It's okay, pup. Let it out. He's gone, Harry. He's gone, you're safe, the world is at peace and Voldemort can't hurt us anymore. Neither of them can take anything else from you ever again. You did good, son. You did good. Now let go. Cry, Harry. It's okay to cry. And thankfully, though I've already gotten to know Harry well enough to know he has somewhat of a wall around his heart, though I know that Harry feels as if he needs to keep himself strong for us, though I know that Harry often feels that he needs to live up to our expectations. Harry complies. He cries in my shirt. And I hold him as he cries. As he cries himself to sleep. I am beyond grateful that Dumbledore is predictable. And that, now that he has been stripped off his title, he isn't able to sense my presence anymore. Lord Ragnarok was more than willing to accept my request for a break in our meeting when I told him my other goal for today. According to the goblin, it gave him time to work on his new duties. I'm waiting in the staff room, a few light notice me not charms on a few of the stone pieces of the floor before me to keep me from being seen, and to keep people like Snape or Dumbledore from sensing my magic at work. I'm really not expecting the whole staff to show up. There are still a few weeks of the summer break left, but I feel confident that it will at least feature Dumbledore, the Four Heads, and maybe either Hagrid or Hooch, or maybe even Madame Pants. When Pomona Sprout is the first to arrive and Filius follows after her, I wonder where Hagrid might be. Then I realize that Dumbledore probably sent him out as an envoy to the giants behind the Ministry's back. Again, I wonder when, in Dumbledore's eyes, I turned into Fudge's little lackey instead of someone reliable and trustworthy. I felt the same way when I first realized that Dumbledore had recruited some of my Aurors for his Order of the Phoenix behind my back. It really didn't surprise me to see Tonks and Shacklebolt standing with Potter's group, though it did make me wonder about Shacklebolt's sources telling him that Sirius was in Tibet. I vowed to myself to question my Aurors and their loyalty and trust in me at a later point. Still, I blame Dumbledore a lot more for that than I blame them. And the fact that, at the end of the last school year, the man was preaching about trust and being a united front is just too ridiculous, considering his current actions. And not just his. I think to myself as I remember the confrontation between Molly and Sirius earlier on in the courtroom. I had genuinely wondered where Molly had gotten the gall from to behave towards Sirius like that. She had actually known of his innocence, yet she had treated him like either a criminal or an infantile toddler or something. She had definitely acted way above her station, and I wondered why someone, who showed signs that she cared for young Harry, would behave like that towards the guardian she knew had been appointed to Harry by his parents. But then I remember what Harry said about Dumbledore and his own signs of loyalty towards the Potters and their sacrifice, and I wonder if, perhaps, that has influenced the woman's behavior. Silently, while Minerva walks into the room, I hope that Arthur will take her to task. Madame Hooch and Pants show up and Dumbledore follows after them. This intrigues me as Albus' office is further away from the staff room than Snape's, and I can't imagine the elder man not requesting his peer to be present. But then I remember what happened at the atrium earlier today, and a victorious grin adorns my face as I think a single thought. Finally. Albus, thank goodness you're here. I've been trying to contact you for over an hour now. I was with Severus in Hogsmeade to buy a few new things for the new year when he suddenly grabbed his left forearm and looked to be in extreme pain. I wanted to aid him or get him to Poppy, but a group of Aurors had just entered the village and told me that they had orders from Fudge and Madame Bones to arrest anyone who acted like Severus did. They told me I could contact you if I wanted, but they took Severus regardless. Next thing I know, they're gone. Pomona's words are like music to my ears. But I know I will get nowhere if I show this off. So I school my face and regain my sense of composure before I cancel my few small enchantments. Everyone turns my way instantly. Amelia, what brings you here? Alright, the contract to be signed at Gringotts. Dumbledore's attempt to get me to leave is beyond obvious and my lips twitch in amusement. Among others. But considering that you looked at young Harry as if he betrayed you earlier, I felt it prudent to make sure these people, your friends, heard the truth. And seeing the truths that Harry uncovered today, you'll have to forgive me if I don't trust you capable of doing so yourself, Dumbledore. But then again, you went behind my back and recruited my Aurors for your order, so I guess the distrust is mutual. Dumbledore grimaces and winces as I quickly make sure he can't talk himself out of this or talk me into a reason for leaving early. Minerva seems annoyed and upset that I talked to Albus like this. Irma, Rolanda and Pomona are gaping at Dumbledore, and Filius groans, hits himself on the head and whispers, I knew it. I wonder if he means that he knew what Albus was doing or that he knew that his boss and friend would try such a thing. Either way, the notion amuses me. Oh Minerva, you'll be pleased to know that, thanks to Nella deciding to repay her life debt, your former lion Sirius has finally been exonerated. Isn't it wonderful that someone who only knew Sirius through that one event knew him better than all of us combined? What a woman, am I right? I know I shouldn't be like this, but I need to throw Minerva off her game in order to get things done quickly. And throwing her own inactivity to ensure her former students' freedom seems like the best and quickest way to ensure this. Wait, Sirius Black is innocent? Irma asks, shocked and surprised. I nod at her and tell her that a lot will be in tonight's special edition of the Evening Prophet. In fact, so much happened in the last few hours that I'm sure part of it will be in tonight's Prophet and part of it will be in tomorrow's. Maybe even both the daily and the evening edition tomorrow. Perhaps you would care to summarize today's events. Again Albus, attempt is humorous, but I decide to go along, this time. Sirius was exonerated, Lord Voldemort executed by curse breakers, Harry's scar was cleansed, the charges against him dropped, several changes have been accepted to be implemented at Hogwarts and… Oh right, Albus lost his title as headmaster. How's that for a summary, Albus? Anyone care for a further explanation? And don't any of you even so much as think of accusing me to be Fudge's little lackey. You know me well enough to know I have enough honor, power and pride to never lower myself to such a demeaning role. So don't bother. I don't often show the side of me that got me instantly accepted into the hit wizard's rank during the war and that allowed me to rise to my current position today in public. But because I can easily read a room and know most of these people, I know I must. Amelia, please, tell us everything. Pomona, as always, calms me down. I release a breath to calm myself and say, as you may or may not know, Harry Potter had his hearing today for underage magic. The minister decided to amplify that up to a full Wizengamot trial and convinced most of us by adding a false accusation of breaking the statute of secrecy to it. Harry was aware of this, don't know how, don't care, and the minute he walked into the courtroom, he took control of the whole situation. And the first thing he did, was reveal to the Wizengamot at large that Albus had created a contract at Gringotts meant to sell the entire Potter fortune and inheritance, at Harry turning 17. And I have that same contract, along with various documents including a letter of validation written by Ragnarok himself, right here. Minerva had jumped up, ready to shout my hide full when she heard my accusation. But when she saw me pull the evidence from my pocket, the woman whitened and fell back down in her seat. Her gaze turns from me to Albus and two words are clear for all to read in those orbs. Albus. Why? I sigh and give the room a few minutes to recuperate. Yet I also stare Albus down and silently tell him not to try and take advantage of my decision. For once the man is to keep quiet and let others take charge. Something that happened earlier today. And that I now know the man hates with a passion after what took place at the courtroom. I don't care. He deserves it. Phileas nods at me to indicate that they're ready to hear more. I nod back, but I also decide to still summarize the whole event a bit. After this, Harry brought up several other very vital points that prove that Dumbledore has been lacking and neglectful towards the safety of the students. It was also revealed why he made the contract and why he was like that. Apparently it concerned a prophecy that even the unspeakables didn't feel like believing in at the same level as Dumbledore over here. Because while Harry, and Sirius, gave Bill Weasley the chance to shine in the spotlight and be the hero, Dumbledore believed that only young 15-year-old Harry Potter could be capable of scarring his soul through murder. And you can deny it all you want, Dumbledore, you wanted that kid to kill. End of discussion, end of story. You left the fate of the wizarding world not on the shoulders of veterans, but a kid. All because a few words said so. And yet William and his team proved you wrong. Lord Voldemort is dead. Or should I say, Tom Riddle is dead. I checked it with Gringotts while I was there. I know that I'm basically doing the same to Dumbledore here that Harry was doing to him in the Wizengamot. But I don't care. The man brought this upon himself. He dug his own grave and I am only too happy to push him into it, as the Muggles would say. Now, I suggest you all brace yourselves, because what I am about to tell you, I'm going to be honest. I was there. I saw it happen. I heard it happen. I saw the events take place. I heard the words being spoken. The spells being cast. The magic being used. I still have trouble believing the full implications of what I saw less than a few hours ago. I still have trouble believing that Albus Dumbledore chose to let a young child keep the darkest of all magic inside his scar and, instead of taking said child to experts to take care of him, was raising him like a pig for slaughter. And those aren't even my words. This time Albus speaks up and mumbles, I truly believe that, with Voldemort having taken both unicorn blood years ago and Harry's blood last June, that, as long as Harry let himself be killed willingly, he would have a chance to survive. I don't even need to gaze around the room to know that the man just sealed his own fate. Everyone else is staring at the man as if they have never seen him before in their lives. As if a complete stranger is seated in the seat of their boss and their friend. Then something interesting occurs. Albus, an orphan that has been deprived of love and care for years, and don't bother, I often see just how much Potter craves the attention of his friends, so I know he was neglected, that longs for his parents with all his heart, as you yourself told us in 1991 that, through your described actions would arrive in limbo. Why would he choose to go back? If he could be with the ones he lost. I don't know what's more amusing. That it's Irma Pants of all people who is saying this, or that Albus is now the one to look at her as if he's never seen her before in his life. The man starts to ramble and it's obvious he never even considered this a possibility. No, Harry has to come back. He has to. He must. The prophesy. Why would he leave his friends behind? Why would he hurt those that care for him like that? It's not like him. It's not in his nature. He wouldn't leave them behind. He would never. I roll my eyes, turn them skywards and shake my head. Albus, I met Potter only earlier today. Even I could see that, regardless of how close Potter and Black are, Potter was shocked beyond belief that Sirius wanted to adopt him. That makes it obvious that the only bond he truly, with all his heart, believes in, is the one with his parents. So why would he choose us over them? For a bunch of words. Really? Albus gazes at me and it almost frightens me to see that he actually desperately wants me to believe that, yes, Harry would choose his friends over his family because of a prophecy. I can only shake my head and think, what happened to you, Albus Dumbledore? I turn my focus away from him and onto the rest of the staff. I can tell that they are just as horrified at the sight of Albus' expression as I am, so I decide to spare them most of the details and just get to the point. Listen up. After Harry set the stage for Dumbledore's neglect to come to light and for Bill and his team of curse breakers to take out Voldemort, he got the Wizengamot convinced to let him come up with a punishment for the old man. And that punishment is twofold. 1. Dumbledore has been stripped of his title as headmaster. 2. Harry has come up with ways that can change Hogwarts for the better, ways that the Wizengamot has already agreed upon and that Lord Black will be funding starting next year. The changes are as followed. First of all, Halloween and the end of the Blood War will from now on be treated with the same level of respect and honor as the choosing of the champions ceremony last school year. The staff and students will show proper respect to the fallen and those that died in battle. I had expected Pomona to look somewhat averse to this idea, but I hadn't expected Minerva's reaction. Absolutely not. The students are much too young for that. The feast is to remain as it is. There is absolutely no reason for this unneeded change. The woman seems actually confused at seeing the shocked and horrified looks that her coworkers are sending her. I feel some of my shock being tempered by the reminder of what Harry said about Dumbledore and his hypocrisy regarding this. Minerva, what in the name of magic are you even talking about? Muggleborns, or at least mine and Pomona's, hold a personal ceremony to honor the fallen of the Second World War every single year. Are you saying you're not joining your Muggleborns in this at the start of May? Your house has more Muggleborns than either of ours. How can you not know about this? The fact that the woman seems genuinely shocked about this, about the notion that students are partaking in such an event, has me wondering about how close she has been in contact with her house these past few years. I decide to leave that thought for later. I shake my head to draw everyone's attention back my way and say, this decision will be enforced by several students, who were all present when the change was announced, as well as parents and the Wizengamot. You can argue all you want, it's happening. Next up, 5 empty and/or unused classrooms will be found, cleaned up and equipped with portraits that are in direct contact with the heads of house. These rooms will then be converted into common rooms where 2 of our 4 houses will be able to meet together. There will also be times where these common rooms will be open for said houses and naturally, house elves set to keep an eye on things. What good will that do? This time it really doesn't surprise me that Minerva is the one arguing and questioning the change, as I know just how competitive the woman is. It will help house unity. It will keep students who are family but in different houses from being able to spend time together. It will lessen the house rivalry and the houses from seeing each other as only rivals and enemies. And before you even dare argue, Minerva, Padma Patil herself admitted that she and her sister, one of your lions, consider this a dream come true. Minerva looks genuinely shocked at this and her shock intensifies as Irma nods and says, I can imagine. I know Miss Patil and I know she loves studying in the quiet of my library. But I also know that she sometimes skips days of studying there, just to find a time and place to spend with her sister. I've also heard her complain several times on how that chance is being taken from her as her workload increases. And I hear the same from a few other students as well. Though strangely enough the Ravens are usually quieter about this than other houses. At this I turn to Phileas and send him a quiet look that tells him I will explain that later. The man nods. Then I fell Minerva with a glare and snarl, get it through your head, Minerva McGonagall. You might be deputy headmistress, but you seem to be blinder than a bat about what your students want and need. These ideas came from Harry and each time he brought one up, he asked for validation and verification with the students that were present during the meeting. This isn't just what he wants, it's what your students want. And their reasons behind each desire of these ideas is genuine, heartfelt and perfectly understandable. But there is. I already know exactly what McGonagall wants to argue and snarl. There is plenty wrong with Hogwarts. You're just too blind, too arrogant and too damn proud to want to admit that. You're more desperate for the status quo than Fudge, for goodness sake. And he didn't need Potter, Umbridge or even Malfoy to go along with this. I saw it in his face, Minerva. Cornelius genuinely believed these ideas to be worthwhile and worth the effort. He genuinely believed in the positive results these ideas can have. I even believe that, if Black hadn't offered to fund the other stuff, he would have done so himself. Of his own accord, without anyone whispering in his ear to do so. So what does that say about your denial about any of this? The woman is gaping at me, her eyes wide and her square-shaped glasses dangling off the tip of her nose, about to fall off. I quickly use a bit of magic to ensure that they remain in place. I take and release a few deep breaths to calm myself and say, now the next few points are smaller in nature and won't even require much effort from any of you as most of this will be provided by the students for the coming year. But at the same time they will have big lasting consequences that have already been proven to be of positive nature. The food cart on the Hogwarts Express will be receiving various forms of Muggle candy to provide to the students during the upcoming train ride. The house elves will be provided a cookbook with Muggle meals that will be up on the house tables either before or after an important feast, such as the opening feast of the Christmas feast. One bookcase in the library will be dedicated to Muggle story books. I believe the term is Disney fairy tales or something, for Muggleborns to read when they feel homesick. And several board games will be provided to be placed in the common rooms, though whether these will be distributed to Slytherin will be up to them. Again, House Black will be signing a contract with Gringotts and Hogwarts where he promises to provide the funds necessary as long as they go to these causes, nothing else. Everyone, other than Albus, is staring at me. Yet I easily discern that they are staring at me for various reasons. Minerva is just dumbstruck and that again makes me wonder about her bond with her lions. Phileas and Pomona seem mostly interested in the board games. Rolanda just seems genuinely pleased and startled at the same time. And Irma is actually grinning. I can honestly say that I will happily empty one of my bookcases for that idea, Amelia. I sincerely hate how, every year, I have to disappoint at least a dozen Muggleborns by telling them that their favorite storybook isn't part of my collection. I've brought the issue up with the board, and Albus over here, several times since I started working at the library. Albus just ignores me and says that Hogwarts needs to focus on more pressing matters first, matters that change every single bloody year, and those on the board that support my idea always get vetoed and outvoted by the rest. This time the staff are all staring at Irma, though I feel as if they probably have different reasons behind their shock. Knowing Pomona and Phileas, they're probably shocked that they didn't know about this. But Dumbledore and Minerva seem genuinely shocked that the woman even mentioned any of this in the first place. Minerva even bristled in anger when Irma quoted Dumbledore with an annoyed tone of voice. Her loyalty to that man is just uncanny. And potentially worrisome. I think to myself and instantly I start to wonder if the woman will make a good headmistress in Dumbledore's place or if she'll just try to become Dumbledore 2.0 and continue where he left off, regardless of the ineffectiveness of his methods. I decide to meet with her, the staff and the board about this at a later date and focus back on the topic at hand. And the fact that this is all being provided to Hogwarts by the students. I really don't care for this fact, but I feel sure that Irma will help me promote the idea regardless if given the chance. And the woman proves me right. Absolutely marvelous. I've been encouraging the older Muggleborns to do this for years on end. I know it's not commonly known around the school as I try to keep purebloods like Mr. Malfoy from having more reasons to pick on Muggleborns, but I've been organizing annual fairy tale readings with the Muggleborns for at least a decade now. I know this will go a long way into helping Muggleborns feel less homesick, and so will the other ideas. I may not be the biggest fan of some of the food products Muggles have invented the past century or so, but I've heard enough Muggleborns talk to know that eating pizza is as much a rite of passage to Muggleborn teenagers as a presentation ceremony is to pureblood teenagers. So I know that the meals will also be a wonderful and greatly welcomed addition. And as long as they keep those meals and games out of my library, I will happily join in on that support. I know it's already been decided, but these changes have my vote of confidence. I didn't really expect this much vocal support from the woman, but I can't deny that I am grateful for her speech nonetheless. And the fact that she is this supportive has me decide to make use of her intelligence, care and dedication a bit more. I have one last question for you, Irma. What do you think of the house point system and the fact that the cup isn't rewarded to the winner until the end of the year? Instantly Minerva actually bristles like the cat animagus that she is and wants to jump up and yell at me, but then we both get shocked. It's not Irma who answers, it's Phileas who shouts. Finally, everyone looks at him and he growls, "I'm part goblin, you all know this and you know how I think of reward systems. I've never agreed with this one, not even when I was a student myself. I cannot thank Mr. Potter enough if he's done what I think he's done." I smirk at him and say, "Give it an overhaul and make it so that, for the coming semester, 24 students from 5th, 6th and 7th year, 2 each from each house and year, will be chosen to partake in the changed system. Have it so that they will all only have individual points instead of house points and that the points won't be considered house points until the end of the semester. Make it so that, if one of them loses 20 points it won't affect the, say, 10 points one of the other chosen students earned only minutes earlier." By now Phileas is almost bouncing in his seat and he yells, "That's even better than anything I ever came up with. I love it. 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 But surely you understand that this will increase the pressure we the staff will have to endure. Surely you can't be okay with such a thing. Just think of all the paperwork, Phileas. We'd have to give the students a whole. I really don't understand why Minerva is still trying to argue with these ideas, and her colleagues as well. But Phileas is just as done with the stubborn woman as I am and says, 'Oh posh, we'll ask some curse breakers to adjust the magic on the hourglasses. Too bloody easy. You're making a bloody mountain out of an anthill, really. But we don't have time to worry about these changes. Without Albus, I'll be even more swamped with my duties. Headmistress, head of Gryffindor and Transfiguration's teacher. Not to mention that we need to look for a new Dada teacher and maybe even a new potions teacher and head of Slytherin house. Oh, and before I forget, Voldemort is still out there. It's not often that Minerva McGonagall loses her composure. Yet this time makes me wonder if the woman shouldn't have been allowed to drop one of her responsibilities sometime sooner. I want to blame Dumbledore on this one, but I'm sure that Minerva and her stubborn pride are also partially to blame for it. Yet one point she raised I firmly disagree with. Minerva, what about I witnessed Lord Voldemort's demise at the hands of Bill Weasley and a group of curse breakers and went to Gringotts to verify his eternal damnation, don't you understand? Or are you going to be like Albus and believe that a child needs to condemn his soul in order to be your precious little salvation from a monster we, if we had worked together like that team of curse breakers did, could have overpowered? Someone who is our responsibility, not his. I may not have lost my composure like Minerva, but the woman is gaping at me nonetheless. And her coworkers all nod in agreement to my words. All except Dumbledore. But I long since stopped caring about that. And because of my lack of care, I grin and quip. So Albus, isn't it about time that you call that envoy to the giant's back? I'm sure Hagrid will need quite a bit of time to adjust to these changes before the school year starts, don't you think? Sounds like a fine last job for you as the former headmaster of this school, if you ask me. The man grimaces and frowns at me as if I am a rebelling teenage student that was caught out after curfew by him and his staff. I just stare him down and silently tell him, "Stop bothering, I no longer care what you think. You lost my respect, old man. Just deal with it." And with that I want to turn and walk out, but then I remember what started this meeting. I turn to Pomona and say, "Oh, and don't worry, the minister has made a deal with Gringotts. All Death Eaters, whether spies or otherwise, will have their vaults frozen and will be subjected to Veritaserum. And because I only care for justice, not personal gain or anything, I was chosen by Gringotts to be the independent party meant to question each of them. I can assure you, the first question I will ask Severus Snape is whose side are you on? I promise to conduct my questioning once I have that answer. And of course, if you so wish it, you will be welcome to the questioning as guests." And with those 2 words, I leave the room and its occupants. I have work to do. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more magical what ifs.